Get started. Good afternoon. Hope everybody's doing well. I will now call to order the Joint Interim Standing Committee on Government Affairs. Madam Secretary, if you could please call the roll.
Senator Krasner, Senator Neal,
Here.
Assemblymember Cole,
Here.
Assemblymember Considine,
Present.
Assemblymember Flanagan, Assemblymember Gurr,
Here.
Assemblymember Nguyen,
Here.
and Chair Flores.
Present. Please let the record reflect that Senator Krasner is present via Zoom. I saw her waving, but I think she had a hard time unmuting. Also, please mark Assemblymember Flanagan as absent excused and mark her as present as she joins us a bit later today. Good afternoon, everybody, to our very exciting first meeting of Interim Government Affairs. I see the excitement in everybody's faces, and that's what makes my day better. So I do have the distinguished pleasure and honor of serving as the chair for this interim. As you all know, we typically rotate between the Assembly and Senate. And previously, I had the opportunity to serve on the Interim Government Affairs Committee previously, and now I get to serve as a chair. It's a tremendous honor to have our Vice Chair, Assemblymember Considine, serving, who, as you all know, is incredibly smart, dedicated, and hardworking, and it's just a pleasure to have her. I also personally have the pleasure of saying that we have some folk returning to government affairs. As our committee policy analyst, Jan Stinesbeck, as you all already know him, we will have everybody introduce themselves again in a second, and also our amazing counsel, Ms. Heidi Clarkson, who has also been instrumental in helping us move and get some work done for the state of Nevada. But before we get into the committee brief and the agenda, we will follow the order as it appears. I want to give an opportunity for folk to introduce themselves. I would like to start with our staff and then move into the rest of the members. And then I will finish off by just talking a little bit about the time that I've had the pleasure of serving on this committee. So if we could please start with Mr. Jan Stinesbeck. Just an introduction, a little bit about yourself, and that they know we're in good hands.
Thank you, Chair. For the record, Jan Stinesbeck with the Legislative Council Bureau with the Research Division. And this is my first interim actually staffing this committee. Last session, I had a great pleasure of staffing Senate, Government Affairs, and been with the LCB now close to 11 years. And it's a real pleasure to staff in this committee. Thank you.
I'm Heidi Clarkson with the Legal Division. I have staffed the Senate Government Affairs Committee since 2009. I'm very happy to be staffing the Joint Interim Committee to work with both the senators and the Assembly members. And if there's anything I can do, please let me know. I also have a co-counsel with me that I'll introduce very quickly. I have Stephanie Madrid. She's one of our Vegas attorneys staffing down here, so she will also be helping me as well.
And then Stephanie, if we could please go to you.
Hi, Stephanie Madrid here. First committee that I'm helping staff. And I just moved back from Oregon, so I'm excited to be here.
And I just recently found out that she will be taking the bar exam here recently, so she hopefully will be joining us as an attorney. Thank you for being with our committee and joining us. We'll go to Carson City. If we could have whoever wishes to go first in Carson City.
Thank you, Chair. Alex Drozdoff with the Research Division, LCB. This is my first interim staffing the Government Affairs Committee, and I staffed Assembly Government Affairs last session. Thank you.
Hello, this is Sarah Delap from the Legal Division. I have been with the Legislative Council Bureau since 2020. I have previously staffed the Assembly Government Affairs Committee in 2023. and 2025, and this is my first time staffing the Government Affairs Interim Committee. Thanks.
Good afternoon, Chair Flores, members of the committee. This is Justin Luna with LCB Fiscal. I've been with LCB Fiscal for 4 years. I spent 12 years on the executive branch side with different agencies. First time staffing government affairs in the interim. I staffed TRPA Marlette Lake subcommittee in the interim, last interim, and happy to be here and look forward to helping out as I can. Thank you.
And if we could also have Ms. Jen Jacobson with our research policy assistant.
I'm Jen Jacobson. I'm the voice that you do not see. I have been with the LCB since 2022. This is my first time in government affairs.
And thank you for joining us. And obviously, you all know that beyond them, there's a whole host of other individuals who are making a lot of things happen for us. And I just wanted to say thank you to them. While we may not formally recognize them, we recognize that none of this happens with everybody's help. With that, members, if we could have you all introduce yourselves. We'll start with our vice chair. If you could just briefly let us know your district, a little bit about it, if you've ever had the pleasure of serving on government affairs, and then topics that you're hoping that we discuss during the interim.
Well, good afternoon. I'm Venetia Constantine. I have the honor of representing Assembly District 18, which is in southeast Las Vegas and a little bit of North Henderson. My district includes the Clark County Wetlands Park. So if you haven't been there, please go. It's an amazing, wonderful place. I was the chair of government affairs during the last session, and I am really looking forward to going over a lot of the items that we're talking about today. Thank you.
And thank you, Vice. We'll move on next to Senator Neal.
Okay, good afternoon. I'm not going to answer all of your questions, but I'm going to save that. So I've been in the legislature since 2011. I've served on government affairs on the assembly side since I came in, and then I just got back on government affairs on the Senate side. I think I've served twice on the Senate side in government affairs. I think I started in 2020 and then I wasn't on. And for the 21, I was on for the 21, not the 23, and then back on the 25. So long history on this committee, I'm sure, to the demise of, or lack of, well, I won't say demise. I might be the nemesis of some local governments, but that's okay. What do I want us to cover? Home rule and where we are and where we probably shouldn't be. Thank you. I represent Senate District 4.
Senator, starting off with already trying to give us some tension on this committee, Senator. We're just getting started. Assemblymember Nguyen, please.
Thank you, Chair. It's nice to be identified as myself and not my colleague in the Senate. For those of you who got that inside joke, yes, I get confused with my colleague on the other chamber all the time. But my name is Yui Nguyen. I have the honor to represent Assembly District 8 in the Southwest Las Vegas. We are one of the most diverse districts in the state, where 40% of my constituent kind of look like me. So that's kind of cool. The GA has been my committee since I started in my freshman year. So this is, I've served on it consecutively doing my first and second regular session. And this is my first time serving on GA doing the interim. So I look forward to learning from all the amazing colleagues and experts here at the table and out in the audience. I love working with local government, and I love working with all the experts in moving our community forward. So I'm here to learn. So I look forward to learn in the next 6-7 months. Too bad I don't have anybody in the audience because I just said 6-7 and no response. So obviously we're not in the right crowd today. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Assembly Member. I'm sure somewhere there's a fifth grader, seventh grader going crazy. Please let the record reflect that Assembly Member Flanagan is now joined us, and we could have you go next, please.
Thank you, Chair Flores. I am Assemblymember Tanya Flanagan. I represent District 7, which is primarily North Las Vegas and a little bit of Las Vegas on the north end of the valley. This is my first interim Joint Government Affairs Committee. It will be exciting and an opportunity to learn. I'm looking forward to the work we will do to look at policy. I'm a policy legislator mostly. So just excited to be here and be a part of the experience. I apologize for my tardiness. I thought we were in the other building, or at least the room was in the other building, but it wasn't. So learning new things all the time. But again, just excited to be here, and it's good to see some old faces and some new faces.
And thank you for joining us, Assemblymember. I think most of us were in that other building at some point earlier today. And next up, we could have Assemblymember Cole. Please introduce herself.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Lisa Cole, and I am an Assemblywoman for District 4, which is in the northwest part of Las Vegas. My district is interesting, I think, in ways that are maybe a little unique. I don't know. But I have 2 City of Las Vegas councilwomen that represent part of my district. I have a significant part of unincorporated Clark County and a smidge of North Las Vegas as well. So government affairs is very interesting to me for that dynamic. This is my first time on government affairs, interim or otherwise. I usually sit on judiciary at the same time frame, so government affairs was not in the realm for me. But topics, I actually just want to listen and hear and see what this committee does and learn from it. So thank you.
And thank you for joining us. Senator Krasner, I wanted to see if you were able to unmute yourself at this time.
Thank you, Chair Flores. Yes, Senator Lisa Krasner, proudly representing Nevada State Senate District 16, which encompasses Incline Village, South Reno, Story County, Washoe Valley, and Carson City. And I have had the honor of serving on Senate Government Affairs in the 2023 legislative session and the 2025 legislative session. And I can verify that it is the hardest working committee at the legislature.
And thank you for joining us, Senator. Next, we will move to Carson City, please.
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. My name is Bert Gurr. I represent District 33, which most of you had the geography lesson in the past when I've been on committees. But it is the just about the largest district land-wise in the United States. 50,255 square miles according to LCB. I represent most of Elko County, all of White Pine, all of Lincoln, 3/4 of Nye, and most of Eureka. So I get around the state better than most of you do, except I have to drive, you can fly. So anyway, I'm happy to be here. I've served two terms in the full Assembly Government Affairs Committee. Was an alternate on this last session in the interim last time, and now I'm on the committee and I love it. Thank you.
And thank you. Look forward to working with you during the interim. And I am Senator Edgar Flores. I represent Senate District 2. My northern west boundary is Charleston and Las Vegas Boulevard. So we get some of those downtown properties and it moves northeast from there. Rancho High School, Desert Pines High School, El Dorado kind of gives you some geographical understanding of the area that I am in. I've had the pleasure of serving on government affairs since 2017, 17, yeah. And 15 since 2015 when I was originally in the Assembly, and then I've had the privilege of now continuing to serve now in the State Senate. I am looking forward to working with all of you. We will be going through a lot of bills that we discussed during the previous legislative session. And we will also try to discuss bills that may have moved out of government affairs through the policy discussion, but then perhaps did not make it out of the money discussion, as I am certain that those conversations will continue for the upcoming cycle. So that should give everybody an idea of what we're hoping to do in terms of continuing the work that we've been doing. Alongside of that, I think anybody who's been on government affairs before understands that there's kind of revolving topics that we consistently go over, and we always try to move the needle just a little bit every single session. We want to start off with those conversations. I remember my very first time serving on this committee, the biggest complaint is that the state does not do enough to bring in federal funds. And it's been an ongoing effort by a lot of really talented human beings in the state. And I just wanted to kind of get an update of the work that's being done, how we can continue to work together. I also wanted to give everybody just a little bit of an understanding of dates. Obviously, y'all have families and schedules. So we are hoping to meet, and this is tentatively, but I just want you to be able to have and mark them down on your calendar. March 5th, April 2nd, May 7th, June 4th, August 6th. I'll repeat that. March 5th, April 2nd, May 7th, June 4th, August 6th. It's possible that we change those dates, but tentatively those are what we're hoping and we're aiming to do now. And I just want everybody to have an understanding of that, just to hopefully block those dates out and make some time for government affairs. With that, members, before I forget, I do want to encourage all of you, as we're moving along, if there's topics that spark your interest or things that you'd like for us to discuss, if you could immediately let either Vice Chair Considine or myself know, so that we can add those and plug them into one of the different dates that we're contemplating. With that, we're going to go ahead and jump in straight into the agenda. As you all know, we will not be doing public comment at the opening of each meeting, but we will reserve that to the end. We are doing them at the beginning, so we're doing it both times. Never mind. I just got the look from everybody in the room saying we are doing it twice. Fair enough. So we will go ahead and open it up for public comment. I want to remind everybody that wishes to join us for public comment that we're going to limit public comment to 2 minutes. We ask that you be respectful during public comment. And those of you wishing to come up for public comment or who are going to be joining us over the phone, please state your name for the record and spell it so that for minute purposes we can properly document that. So with that, I'd like to go ahead and open it up for public comment. Anybody wishing to join us either in Carson City or Las Vegas? Seeing nobody coming forward, I'd like at this time to invite those wishing to join us over the phone for public comment.
Thank you, Chair. The public line is open and working. There are no callers at this time.
Sounds good. Because we'll be doing public comment at the end, for those of you who are maybe not able to do it now but want to do it at the end of the meeting, I just want to briefly let everybody know that if you'd like to join us for public comment, you can join us via phone by calling 1-888-475-4499. Again, that's 1-888-475-4499. And then when prompted, you must enter a meeting ID number. The meeting ID number is 832-8156-0602. That is very complicated, but that's also listed on our website. So if you have any questions, you can always visit our site and get it from there. Next on the agenda, we would like to go over the presentation of the committee brief by Mr. Stinisbeck, please.
Thank you, Chair. Again, for the record, Jan Stinisbeck with the Research Division of the LCB. I'd like to start my comments by reminding everyone that as non-partisan staff, I cannot advocate for or against any measure that comes before this committee. It is my role, though, to assist the Chair and the committee members in their work this interim. The committee brief should be both in your packets in front of you and online. It contains relevant information on the membership of the committee, staff services, the powers, duties, and jurisdiction of the committee, the potential dates that Chair Flores mentioned earlier. It also has a little summary on past committee action and as meant as a general starting point, as a reference for resources, if there's anything the committee might need, and at the chair's pleasure, more happy to look into. And with that, in the interest of time, I'll thank you, Chair.
And thank you. Members, as you know, you can always go back and reference that very well put together packet. It has incredibly useful information. Next on the agenda, we'll move into presentations. We have Ms. Sanders, the Director of the Governor's Office of Federal Assistance, joining us. Thank you for your willingness and how helpful you always are with this committee. Welcome, and whenever you're ready, and as always, please state your name for the record as you get going.
Thank you, Chair Flores and members of the committee. Akia Sanders, for the record, Director of the Office of Federal Assistance. So we're going to give a little presentation about what we do as an office in the state. So a little bit about us, if you're not familiar with us. We were created out of the 81st legislative session, AB 445, and with a vision to support our stakeholders in obtaining, increasing, and maximizing federal assistance, as well as a mission to reduce barriers by providing inclusive, collaborative, comprehensive, and centralized support in obtaining federal dollars for Nevada. So our strategic role. OFA serves as that central point of contact for the state of Nevada by statute. And what that means is we coordinate statewide federal grant strategy, single point of contact. If you're familiar with Intergovernmental Review or Executive Order 12372, which it's called out in a lot of federal grant notice of funding opportunities. The state is required to review applications before they go to the federal government. So we serve as that role for the state of Nevada. Compliance and risk mitigation, and cross-agency collaboration. This centralized role strengthens Nevada's credibility with federal agencies and reduces fragmented, duplicative efforts across the government. So OFA structure and scope. So we're established under NRS 223.460 to 486. OFA supports 2 offices, one in Carson City and another here in Las Vegas, with a statewide capacity with only 6 authorized positions when fully staffed. Our mandate is statewide, spanning executive agencies, local governments, tribes, and nonprofits, yet our staffing is not scaled with the size of Nevada's federal portfolio. This mismatch is an important context for today's discussion. So why centralization matters, the strategic value it has to the state. Centralization, it reduces duplication, it improves consistency across the state, it strengthens Nevada's credibility with federal funding agencies, and it lowers compliance and audit risk. OFA does not replace agency authority. It adds strategic alignment, oversight, and support to protect state and federal dollars. States with strong centralized grant offices are more competitive for large, complex discretionary awards. And if you're familiar with other centralized offices across the nation, you have Arizona, Ohio, that centrally manage the funds for the state, and it's much more streamlined. So Nevada's federal funding landscape. Federal funds account for more than 1/4 of Nevada's biennial state budget, or 27.7% to be exact. And this number came from the Gwynn Center's April briefing, and we're actually in a contract with them right now to do another briefing, so that should be out in a couple months. But most of the federal funding supports core engaging programs rather than one-time initiatives. And those categories are health, transportation, education, and workforce. As federal requirements increase, administrative capacity and coordination become fiscal risk management tools, not just grant functions. So the federal funding priority shifts, obviously I don't have to tell you guys, you've seen what's been happening in the federal government, what we just dealt with this week with the partial shutdown, and we're still pending DHS funding February 13th. So at the federal level, we're seeing a clear shift toward constrained non-defense discretionary funding with heavier reliance on continuing resolutions and fewer brand new discretionary programs. Defense, border security, and homeland security priorities are receiving greater emphasis relative to civilian domestic programs. Public health and HHS programs are undergoing restructuring and budget realignment, and federal research and development funding is under downward pressure with priority given to mission-driven and defense-aligned research. Foreign assistance and international development programs are being de-emphasized through rescissions and executive review. Federal grant-making places stronger emphasis on oversight, policy alignment, and accountability. And there's been a lot of executive orders out of this administration that has changed a lot of the ways we generally do federal funding. So what does this mean for Nevada? In today's constrained federal environment, Nevada has to think differently. Protecting the dollars we do have and is just as important as pursuing new funding opportunities. Fiscal stewardship, audit readiness, and compliance are no longer optional back-end functions. They are essential to how we sustain investments in Nevada, We're seeing that states with strong internal controls, clear coordination, and solid performance reporting are more competitive and more trusted at federal level. And then obviously there's other issues at hand at the federal level as well when it comes to federal funding. OFA's role is to serve as Nevada's central hub, helping agencies and partners pursue funding strategically, stay compliant and align projects with statewide priorities. By strengthening readiness on the front end and oversight on the back end, we reduce risk, prevent disallowed costs, and avoid giving federal dollars back to the federal government. Ultimately, a coordinated compliance-driven approach ensures Nevada maximizes every federal dollar while safeguarding taxpayer resources. So some of the barriers I've been seeing for some of our other stakeholders like local governments and nonprofits, and I won't get too far into nonprofits because I know we have two other great presenters after me, but capacity constraints, federal, cost share requirements. Yes, we do have a matching program in our office, and thank you for this committee for helping us pass AB 554 during legislative session. But that amount of money that we receive annually is only $1 million. So $2 million every 2 years is not enough for me to support the entire state. And so what happens is it's a first come, first serve program. When those funds are depleted, we don't have any more funding to continue to assist. So we definitely need some investment into that fund. Fragmented administrative infrastructure increases compliance burden, and it disproportionately impacts rural and underserved communities. OFA's role is to level the playing field by improving access, readiness, and coordination. Go past the second one. I already hit that one. So why intergovernmental coordination matters. So federal funding reality, federal grant programs increasingly reward aligned state and local priorities. And we're seeing a huge shift from reinvestment from our normal historic programs that were maybe aligned with NGOs or nonprofits, and they're moving that funding opportunity to the state, as well as decreasing those funding amounts. And so it's really important that we're making sure our agencies are compliant, our nonprofits are compliant, coordinated administrative reporting and oversight. The challenges of decentralized grant management is a very fragmented approach. As I already stated, duplication of efforts, inconsistent compliance, and higher audit risk. I don't need to tell you guys, we're a few years behind on our single audit. It is causing us issues with some of our drawdowns and some of our state agencies, and it will continue to cause issues if we, as a state, don't become more compliant with our federal funding. So the flip, what is Nevada doing well? So the strong foundation and legislative collaboration. So Nevada has established a strong statutory and operational foundation by creating the Office of Federal Assistant as the state centralized office for federal grant strategy, coordination, and oversight. We've worked with our partners and our Nevada Advisory Council on Federal Assistance, and we finally were able to publish the state plan for maximizing federal assistance. So that's really, really important. And this allows us to better align state priorities with federal opportunities and position Nevada to be more intentional and competitive. Through collaboration with Nevada Grant Lab, United Way of Southern Nevada, the state was able to enact AB 442, which strengthens grant coordination. It improves payment practices and better supports nonprofits and their subrecipients. And as I already stated, and thank you for this committee, we were able to enact AB 554, which essentially made the grant matching fund a revolving fund so that funding doesn't revert back to general fund. Oh, sorry. So I just wanted to highlight how our office has been very strategic in partnering with our stakeholders across the state. And I know Nevada Grant Lab will present, as well as we work very closely with the Center for Nonprofit Business, and Jeff is in the north. But some of the things that we've been able to do in our collaboration with Nevada Grant Lab, obviously we work to do AB 442, and we also came together and we created some sort of a workforce pipeline where we worked to certify grant managers. So the National Grant Management Association has accredited certification. Sorry, this is more Phoebe's baby, so sorry. An accredited certification called Certified Grant Management Specialist. And so we teamed up with the Nevada Grant Lab, and they also supported grant writers in getting the grant professional certification. And we had about 80 people. I don't know how many they had, but we have people sitting for the test now to get certified as grant managers across the state. And I think this is really important because what we're doing is we're adding certified professionals to the workforce. So measurable impact to talk about our grant matching program. The grant matching program delivers a strong return on investment. This last biennium, approximately $7.50 in federal funds for every $1 the state of Nevada match. And we have two really big examples. We were able to give Truckee Carson Irrigation District $1.1 million to do renovations for the Lahontan Dam Reservoir. And we just gave Nevada Rural Electric Association $1.2 million to do grid resilience, and that's gonna support 8 counties. And that matched some bipartisan infrastructure law funds from the Governor's Office of Energy. So areas of improvement, Nevada's current grant environment is still highly decentralized, which limits visibility, consistency, and our ability to scale best practices statewide. Fragmented systems and process contribute to uneven compliance, slower response to federal opportunities, and higher administrative burden. We are working with the Office of Project Management and their Core and V ERP system that's come online, and the grant lifecycle management portion of that is supposed to kick off in April. So that's supposed to be a statewide module. So all the state agencies should be transferring over to utilizing that as their grant management system. And then next year, the grantor module will come online, and that'll be for subrecipient monitoring. And so just some of the strategic priorities we have for this year, I just talked about the April 2026 kickoff for the Core and V GLM module. We're working for our state agencies to do an internal grant academy on Nevada eLearn and making it a certification process. So if you are a new hire and you have to work on grants, you have to go through the certification before you get to have to work on a grant. We're continuing to partner with Nevada Grant Lab on the Certified Grant Management Specialist cohort. We have a conference coming up here in September at the Las Vegas Convention Center, and we're partnering with the purchasing team. And then we're working on suspension and debarment tracking. I've been hearing from some of the agencies that they're not getting the OIG at the federal level. They're not updating their lists when certain nonprofits or different organizations are being debarred, and it's causing other agencies to give the agency that is debarred grants. And so we're trying to be more help the state be more transparent in their reporting requirements. So ultimately, I think the path forward is pursue targeted statutory and budgetary investments in our office, increase our capacity and our authority with staffing so that we can carry out the statute that our office has. Implementing statewide grant portfolio management model. I think that this will keep, if our office can do grant portfolio management like the governor's finance office does financial portfolio management, and it's centralized in our office, then I believe that we could decrease some of the compliance issues we're having across the state. And I just said that. Bottom line, Nevada has to make the right policy choice by establishing a centralized Office of Federal Assistance to deliver meaningful statewide impact. The office must be resourced to match its statutory responsibility and the scale of the federal funding portfolio it oversees. Thank you. I know I said a lot and my voice is a little shaky. Any questions? Sorry.
Members, any questions? And I will say that we were trying to be very intentional in having folk both from the state, nonprofit and private sector kind of come in and discuss this conversation. So there may be questions that you may want to reserve a bit later, but any questions? Vice Chair, please.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a question. I know you've talked earlier a little bit about some grants are going down, others are increasing. I'm just wondering, are you keeping track of the number of grants, especially like HHS, Health Human Services, as opposed to the more of the like defense, the Homeland Security, the Border Security, and if you're keeping track of the number of those grants and the success of those grants every year so that we could maybe look at those?
No. Akia Sanders for the record, Assemblymember Considine. Yes, we are keeping track of the grants that are either being canceled or the lack of investment or these grants are going away. And I think I understood your question, if we're receiving funding in different agencies. Yeah, we do keep track of that. I think one of the bigger issues we have as a small office with a huge order is pulling our agencies into compliance. Per that statute, our agencies should be reporting to us when they apply for a federal grant, amend a federal grant, or if they're at risk of any funds going back to Treasury, they should be, and they're not. So we have a very fragmented number and our data is an issue, which is why we just partner with the Gwynn Center to see if we can do some research to get a full picture. So we're working really hard. Our hope is next session we can do maybe a housekeeping BDR to expand our office so we can do the work that the statute was intended to do. But right now, I mean, I think across the state, that data is fragmented. Yeah.
Next, we'll go to Senator Neal.
Thank you, Chair. So I have a question. Well, I have a couple of questions, but the partnership that you have with Gwen, is that free? How much is it?
Kia Sanders for the record. We spent $20,000 to do this report. And there was other partners. I mean, Nevada Grant Lab is supportive as well. I thought this report is really important because the first report they did, it told you the main agencies in the state that carry the most federal funding. This report is going to trickle it down to our nonprofits. And like I said in our presentation, as you've seen, there's been a huge shift at the federal level of investments from taking programs from the nonprofits and taking them up to the state level. But there's statutory requirements that the feds have implemented that some of these nonprofits are fulfilling these programs, and we need these. And so the thought was, let's tell that story, hopefully to have it for you guys for next session to make some informed decisions.
So this is a current activity that you want to continue to do at $20,000 per report?
No. My hope is that this huge investment the state has made into Corin V. Akia Sanders for the record. The hope is that the investment the state has made into Corin V and this grant lifecycle management module, as well as the grantor module, we should be able to pull reports and have that type of data for you. But right now we don't have it. And part of our statute is we are supposed to help procure a centralized grant management system. And so that portion of it is what we'll be utilizing and working with the states to implement so that we have a real-time it should be transparent with all the cost accounting and all of the grants in one system. We should be able to pull a report and provide those numbers to you.
Chair, follow-up?
Please.
So in regards to the state agencies that you're saying are not sharing the grant they applied for, the amended grant that they may have resubmitted, because there were a lot of amendments, right? Because executive orders pretty much came down and said, hey, population X is out, gender out, Native communities out, resubmit. So what if you could summarize, what is it that they're saying on why they can't comply? What is the reluctance and what is the problem?
Akia Sanders for the record. I personally think this office was created at 81st legislative session, so that's 2022. So we have 4 years, and the history of this office, it didn't stick. Like, the work that we're doing right now is historical. We've never done it before. We've never even been utilized. And so it's really difficult to get agencies who've been working on grants and they have state staff that have been working on this for 20, 30 years to think that they need the Office of Federal Assistance to report, even though it's statutory. And not only is it state statutory, it's also federal statute.
So,
and this is across the state. So I deal with the institutions of higher education who don't want to report to us, even though federally they should be reporting to us when they apply for a grant and it calls for an intergovernmental review. They'll click no.
So they see it as symbolic and the office is disrespected. I'm trying to understand.
I think that they see it more as a burden and an added capacity issue. I can use an example, and I won't call names, but we were working with an agency.
You should call names. Do you want help?
I do want help.
Oh,
but
okay.
We were working with an agency. To try to implement like a grant repository. So all I wanted was data to answer your questions, right? All I wanted was data. And what I was told was that their staff was about to quit because this was an added burden and they were limited. I have 6 people in this entire state and 2 offices. And most divisions have more GMU units than I have in staff.
Follow, please.
Okay. So clearly there's a need for an offline discussion for you to unload information off the record on state agencies where there could be a clear collaboration around at least data and the applications that they're submitting, right? So there's some low-hanging fruit that's out there. And in order for the legislative intent to be carried out, clearly, yes, you need more staffing, but you also need people to comply and agree, right? And if state agencies are not in agreement with the existence of the office, and they're saying, I could care less whether or not OFA is here, and I'm not going to share any information, that is a clear issue that, number one, you should probably bring up. I don't remember you coming to present in front of the finance committees. But if you have, I don't remember you ever bringing up that particular nuance point while agencies are running through their money and grants and at least giving us the tools to then dive in finance or on the wayside to say, hey, she just said you are not complying with state law. And here is X grant, dear Health Authority, dear Transportation Division, dear INSHE, and you have not utilized that ability to convene the legislators to ask questions on your behalf. And I want to know, are you afraid that, because what's the problem?
Akia Sanders for the record. So I did do a budget hearing in February, and just for the record, I've been the director since August of 2025 or 2024, excuse me. So that was my first session. So I kind of got thrown to the wolves. So when I did my budget hearing, I was trying to align with what the previous director had already requested in a budget, and so the budget was built, right? So I'm not making excuses at all. We also have a Nevada Advisory Council on Federal Assistance, and the chair is, the vice chair is Assemblywoman Danielle Monroe-Marino. I have been very vocal to her and the chair, Treasurer Code 9, and they have been very supportive in their work with our council. But I hear you.
No, thank you for that. That makes sense. Thrown to the wolves helps us understand the subtext to that. If it was after February 18th, I wouldn't have been there. So that's probably why I'm taking mental note, because I know I would have brought it up in every single hearing where every single agency came and presented their information. So in 2027, let's have a conversation. So in every single budget hearing, I am bringing up exactly what you need to try to make this make sense.
Akia Sanders, for the record, thank you for that. And I think my budget hearing was February 23rd. So just for the record.
I wasn't there.
Yeah.
But
what I will say to your point, and I've been working very closely with the governor's finance office. I think the deeper we get into this work, and that's why I talked a lot about fiscal stewardship and audit readiness and compliance. Absolutely, we need to bring more federal dollars into the state, but we need to make sure we're managing the ones we already have efficiently and we're not wasting. And so we've been working very closely with the governor's finance office. We've been seeing a lot of things that have been kind of popping up, one of which, and I can share with you, the federal government has a Treasury offset program, and that's essentially their collections program. And if one of our agencies falls out of compliance in a grant, they do snatch and grabs. It takes quite a while, but they do snatch and grabs. And so we have instances, we have a current one right now that I'm working with GFO where a Secretary of State's office their money was pooled, and we're trying to make them whole and trying to go all the way back to 2020 is what I found when it happened, and figure out what agency did this when really you're supposed to be reporting to us. But in 2020, this statute didn't exist. And so I think, and I say this a lot, is like pulling back an onion. And I think the most important thing, bringing federal dollars into the state, absolutely amazing. But we need to be fiscally responsible for the money we already have. So that way, moving forward, we're efficient and we know what we're doing and we're working better as a state.
Members in Las Vegas, any additional questions? Seeing none, do we have any questions from Carson City? Seeing none there, and Senator Krasner, I don't believe you have any questions, but if you do, please unmute yourself. Thank you. And Director, I do appreciate you coming in. I think it is not unique to this conversation that agencies or anytime we try to implement any change in government, that it is incredibly and painfully slow, and it is difficult to get everybody to play along because everybody's trying to figure out what they got going on in their own kitchen, and when you start talking about other folk, it just makes it difficult, right? But I think our role is to help facilitate that, and particularly in situations where you're trying to get along with everybody, right? You're trying to be respectful of the fact that somebody's been there for 30 years, and now you have this new director coming in, and why is she telling me things, right? But I think we can use that vehicle and be more direct, and at times when you can't, and you shouldn't. We shouldn't put you in that situation all the time. Your job is to kind of be there as backup and support. The only question really, when we talk about centralization, what's that day-to-day look like? I mean, what are we talking about there?
So I think Akia Sanders for the record, sorry about that. But I talked briefly about the grant portfolio management model. So in comparison to the governor's finance office and how they do financial portfolio management, and they're also statewide cost allocated. That's kind of my thought process moving forward, where you would have an executive grant analyst that you report to, and relieving that that fiscal barrier on these agencies, because a lot of them say that they don't have the capacity to apply for grants, right? So the competitive, it's always a reason as to why they can't bring in more funding. And so if we can alleviate that and we work directly with the agency to help them write the grant, manage the grant, do the reporting, working with the federal government to make sure they stay in compliance and they're in contact with their grant program officer. We know where the work programs are coming through and how we're getting authority through IFC. If we are hand-holding, then I can give you an answer as to how many grants are in the state. I can tell you how many grants Department of Health and Health Services has or Nevada Health Authority has. but it's really difficult to have that full picture when it's an option, even though it's a statutory requirement to work with us.
Thank you for that. And I think the ask, as we're trying to figure out what will come out of committee for recommendation that we move into the next legislative cycle, is maybe identifying a hypothetical, which is you'll find a situation where an agency, a division, et cetera, fell out of compliance with lost money. And had they given you the opportunity to quarterback that a little bit, how we could have, this is a perfect example where we could have prevented that from happening. Now, you mentioned the Secretary of State's office where you're doing that now, but I think that would be helpful in saying, look, here are examples of where we're doing it now. Here are examples, had they been compliant, had we worked with them, we could have prevented X, Y, Z, because that will help the committee as we're moving forward and we're bringing up these issues and we start getting some pushback from divisions, agencies, et cetera, that we can say, well, look, we have clear examples of where it happened, where we think we could have weaponized this in a way that benefits the entire state.
Akia Sanders for the record. So I do have one, and we actually went to IFC in October. So our office took over the hazardous materials emergency preparedness grant from Department of Transportation. They were 3 years behind Department of Public Safety, and it was the CERT commission that was in charge of it. They were 3 years behind. The reason we found out was Department of Transportation at the federal level called us asking if anybody could take this grant because they wanted to continue to work with the state of Nevada. And so thankful to Phoebe, we were able to take on the grant, become the fiscal agent for the grant. She did all the back reporting, and now we're managing that grant. And she got an extension, a no-cost extension. And it's my understanding CERC would like to continue to do this because they don't have the capacity. And so my thought process is if there's more situations like this, that where we can show we have a need to stand up and just manage the grants, because that's what we do all day. I think that it shows that it works. And I think the best model that I can say on paper, maybe not actually working, is if you look at the universities, UNR and UNLV has the Office of Sponsored Projects. And so they do grant portfolio management. So if you go on their website and look at their assignment chart, they have people assigned to colleges if you're looking for pre-award, post-award, audit, and you can reach out to them and they're supposed to support you in submitting your grant. I don't know about writing it, but submitting your grant, doing the budget, they submit it through one, they manage the UEI, so that's another issue. There is so many UEIs across the state, agencies just, they create them, and that's through SAMS.gov, so you have to have a unique entity identifier to apply for a federal grant. There's so many, they'll create them and then they'll expire. And so we need to manage that a little bit more as well, because if something is happening and that UEI goes to an address and the federal government is trying to contact that person and they're not receiving those letters, then they don't know they're not compliant, or they're just blowing them off. So there's a lot of different instances and models that we can try to utilize. But for me, I think the grant portfolio management makes the most sense because it gives this office more control.
And thank you for that. And we'll continue to work together offline. Appreciate the presentation. Members, any last questions? Seeing none, thank you again. And at this time, we'll go ahead and close out the presentation by the Governor's Office of Federal Assistance, and next move into the presentation of the Center for Nonprofit Business by Mr. Jeff Bryan. Okay, and I believe we're in Carson City for that. Good afternoon from Carson City. Thank you for joining us whenever you're ready.
Okay, great. Thank you all so much for letting me present and share a little bit. My name is Jeff Bryant with the Center for Nonprofit Business. I'm the CEO and founder of this organization, which is a newer organization for the state of Nevada, focused mostly in the north right now, but looking at ways that we can support nonprofits across the state. As we jump into it, again, we're in our second year of operations, and so a lot of what I will share today is what we found, discovered in our business planning approach, our market research, trying to understand the needs the best we could with the communities that are unique across the state, and trying to come up with need statements and solutions that work with them. So share a lot of that. At our core, we focus on 4 different modules as an organization to support the nonprofits throughout the state of Nevada. One is the establishment of the Nevada Nonprofit Network. We'll talk a little bit about that later, but effectively a state association for nonprofits. Secondly, we do a lot of work with technical support with nonprofits, if that's strategic planning support, if it's helping them modernize their finances to be compliant with uniform guidance, helping them understand how to access different dollars, and so forth. We do a lot with professional development. We do a lot of trainings. Again, a lot of the trainings that we've been doing, just for the timely subject matter, have been around compliance. We also run, an academy for younger, newer executive directors to kind of help them understand and run the best organization that they can, providing resources that generally had not existed, at least here in Northern Nevada. And lastly, we do a lot of work to support the advocacy on behalf of the sector itself. And so here's what we know. I know you guys have heard a lot of the stats around the nonprofit sector about, generally we rank towards the bottom in a lot of the categories that we measure. Income and assets per capita, Nevada actually ranks last as nonprofits. Securing federal funding, which I know is a key resource here, where yes, the state's budget is about 28%. However, we generally rank 47th, 48th, 45th in total federal dollars that come into the state annually. And one thing I'd like to point out too is that I hear a lot as I was doing my market research, reaching out to partners, different foundations, different groups that are in this. We actually do not have a lot of nonprofits in the state per capita when we are compared to some of our counterparts, especially around the Mountain West. We do have over 16,000 registered nonprofits in the state of Nevada, which does sound like a lot. However, 67% of those nonprofits have operating income of under $100,000 annually, which very much limits the ability to drive impact in the communities they're serving. And even with that number of 16,000, as I was doing my market research, Nevada ranks 47th in the amount of nonprofits we have per capita to serve our communities throughout the state. And lastly, one of the reasons that really pushed us over the top to found this new organization to support the nonprofit sector is before our founding, nonprofit was one of only 5 states without a statewide association or resource hub to support the nonprofit sector. We have our colleagues in the South Nevada Grant Labs that have been operating for several years and doing some amazing work. However, their focus is more towards the South, and we need to figure out how to broaden those resources and share some of the same capacity building support for nonprofits across the state. And so that's what we've set out to do. In the summer of 2025, we surveyed to death the nonprofits in Northern Nevada. We wanted to truly understand their need. We wanted to kick any of our assumptions to the curb. We wanted to ground truth, our understandings, our thoughts about the sectors so that we could use even our limited resources to make sure that we're driving the best impact that we can. In those surveys that we got, half of nonprofits that reported they have less than 6 months of operating reserves, almost a quarter less than 3 months, which is not very financially stable, especially when we look at the financial markets, or as we look at impacts in philanthropy, as we look at the impacts of inconsistency with the ability to access federal dollars at this point. And we also know it's a critical part. The government funding is a major bit. A lot of the nonprofits we talk to do rely on it. Some of it is passed through dollars through the state of Nevada that is part of that 28% that Director Sanders had mentioned. A lot of nonprofits do also receive these dollars directly from the state or through other potential pass-through organizations. But yeah, 20% of respondents, the government funding accounts for over half of their total revenues. And so disruptions with the federal government, with how federal dollars are being pushed down through the states or being accessible, the on-again funding, the stopping-in funding, it creates a lot of havoc for our organizations to be able to really drive impact in the communities that they're using their federal dollars for. A majority of nonprofits reported, again, negative impacts. A lot of the comments we got is with some of the executive orders that have been coming out, the on again, off again. It's really hard when you're notified that your funding will be going away to stop a program to only a few weeks later to realize that, okay, now we're on again, the funding is back, and to try and restart those processes. A lot of nonprofits, professionals have left the sector. They've moved on to more stable jobs, knowing that these dollars sometimes aren't going to be as reliable as maybe they had been in the past. And as programs are being cut, dollars are being cut, we're hearing more and more that, just essential services to our communities across the state. The demand on nonprofit services is increasing, while investments in those nonprofits seems to be limited. It's not growing. It's tough on the organizations themselves. As I mentioned, nonprofits are laying off staff. Nonprofits are losing staff. There's one organization I'm working closely with in Reno that lost 66% of their staff this year. We do have organizations that have closed. Some of it is because of the back and forth with the limited in funding. Some of it has to do with compliance. Again, we talk a lot about compliance. Director Sanders, I support her 100% in the statement that we need to be better with the dollars that we do have in the state, making sure that we're protecting them, doing the best we can with them, and making sure they're invested appropriately. Concurrently, the government cuts, they're creating much more demand on private funding. If it's just general private donors, our philanthropic community, the community foundations and so forth that we have in our communities, there's not more money in philanthropy right now. And so those dollars are seeing much more demand, a lot more competition, and they're having to make some incredibly difficult decisions on how best to invest their limited dollars to an ever-increasing demand from the nonprofit sector to deliver essential services within our communities. In the summer of 2024, the Community Foundation of Northern Nevada conducted a landscape analysis around capacity building with nonprofits, again, to understand what's happening out there in our communities and trying to understand what are the best ways that we can support our nonprofits to build their capacity, make them better stewards with federal dollars, and make them more competitive to access these federal dollars, and just grow their footprint for impact within the communities. One of the findings that came out of it, and again, this is where one of the pieces that we use to determine whether or not to begin a new organization, is that generally we do need a centralized resource hub for nonprofits. Nevada is unique in its geography with our cities and even our rural communities. And so trying to figure out what these resource hubs look like across the state, I don't need to know that we'll be able to have a singular one. But I think there's lots of coordination. We do have a lot of talks with our colleagues in the South and other organizations across the state, the Community Foundation in Elko, for instance. Lots of conversations about ways that we can support these nonprofits, developing regional hubs that make sense for local communities, and support these organizations. In regard to professional development, we also learned that nonprofit professionals absolutely want access to trainings. They want to be able to attend. They want to be able to enjoy peer networks, peer-to-peer learning, problem solving, which also leads to meaningful collaboration in the sector. The organizations want it. The professionals that run them want it. We just need a resource hub that can be the convener, the one that's putting the priorities out there to take the time to set some time aside for nonprofits to get together and convene. Oops. The top 3 things that we got out of the survey that we put out last summer for what nonprofits in mostly Northern Nevada, most of the respondents were in the Truckee Meadows region. We did get a lot of them from other counties in mostly northwestern Nevada. But number 1 is fundraising. And that's not just effectively asking or soliciting for private donations or philanthropic dollars. Again, fundraising is across the board. How do we increase the types of revenues that we're bringing into our organizations? How do we become bold with our strategies, if it's fee-for-service programming, if it's partnering with our state and local governments, if it's accessing some of these federal dollars? It is a constraint. Again, our nonprofits in Nevada are very under-resourced, they're understaffed, and sometimes underutilized. I think there's a lot that we can do with them. Secondly, strategic planning is one that came up. I've worked in the nonprofit sector for well over 20 years. I've worked in very large nonprofits, multi-million-dollar organizations, and I've worked in very small startups. I can tell you that the passion of the nonprofit professional is real. It's contagious. It's admiring. It's inspiring. But they all focus first and foremost on program delivery. Sometimes taking the step back to think about what do we do in 3 to 5 years? How do we actually accomplish it? How do we draw a roadmap out? Is overlooked. Again, it's a capacity issue. It's not a want issue. I think nonprofits know that it's a best practice. But how do we get them the support to do that? How do we build their staff to a point that they understand the processes of effective strategic planning? And not just building a plan, but implementing it, following that roadmap through fruition to grow your organization and grow the people that are leading it. And then lastly, around communications and marketing. Again, there are a lot of nonprofits in our communities. As I've gone through this approach of trying to understand the nonprofit sector a little better, my background, again, I've been in the sector a long time. I focus mostly in the conservation and environmental world. Getting to know the nonprofits that are dealing with homelessness or dealing with food insecurity or dealing with Medicaid populations. There's a lot of organizations, even in a small community like Reno, a small community like Hawthorne. There's a lot of organizations I had no idea even existed. And so I do think it's a very valid component that nonprofits have a voice, have a way to unite, have a way to bring the sector together, to get their marketing out there, to get their services out there to the communities that really need to access them to support. So here's a little bit about what we're doing about it. Again, we're newer. One of the things that we just accomplished in trying to figure out how to build a state association for the state of Nevada is we are now a member of the National Council for Nonprofits, which is a national affiliate that has state associations in most states in the United States right now. I believe Kansas and North Dakota might be the only ones without a membership or representation at this time. One of the key pieces that we're working on for this is, again, this is like feeding into the sector, trying to invest in the nonprofit professionals, but is developing an association health plan, trying to make sure that nonprofit professionals have the benefits, they have the investment in their employees to keep them around. There's a lot of turnover in the sector. Nonprofit professionals generally don't make anywhere near their counterparts would in the private sector or the for-profit sector, if you will. So trying to find ways that we can retain talent and not lose it. Keep the folks that are passionate about serving their communities in that line of work to do their best. We've been developing robust professional development programs, as I mentioned, trying to find different ways of entry level for all types of professionals, whether we're focusing on executives or we're focusing on folks that are just entering the professional workforce and want to understand how the sector works and where their place might be. We spent a lot of time engaging rural Nevada communities. I am from rural Nevada. I grew up and was raised in Mineral County. And I spent a lot of time in my adult life trying to figure out how to get more resources back into rural Nevada. And so this is a major focus of what our organization is looking at in 2026. We've been talking with partners, again, the Community Foundation, ELCO. We're working with the university's cooperative extension offices to try to understand county by county what the nonprofit landscape looks like and try to understand not just where, maybe crossover or duplication might be happening, but really try to understand what are the gaps in the communities so that when nonprofits approach us, I'm sure our colleagues in the South with Grant Labs get the same of how do I start a nonprofit. It's like the very first step in that is we need to identify a gap is the very first thing that you need to do. Why do we need to be here? But I think exploring those, and then we can figure out ways to support those communities to address gaps that may exist. And then lastly, we do a lot of technical assistance and guidance. I've spent a lot of my career in that conservation world has been dealing with federal dollars. I actually enjoy working through uniform guidance and setting up compliance systems and putting other pieces in place. And I've spent a lot of time working with other nonprofits to support them to be able to access these dollars, to be able to stay compliant with these dollars. Federal dollars are more difficult to handle. especially if you are a smaller organization that maybe can't quite afford a CFO. You're outsourcing it to a group that might not be as familiar with uniform guidance. We do a lot of work there, as does our counterpart in the South again. In ways that I think that we can be supportive of the sector in general, again, this is just an anecdote from my career in this sector. We'd love for our partners to be able and willing to invest in the true cost of services. I know that our government partners do rely on the nonprofit sector in a lot of ways. We're able to adapt quickly, and we do get things done generally at a better cost. We're more efficient with it. However, there are expectations out there in some instances, probably more than needed, that we're expected to still try to come in under budget, come in under whatever it is, whether it's administrative fees that are part of it. How do we keep our lights on? Are you willing to pay for services? Are you willing to pay for projects? Are you willing to pay for supplies? There's a lot that goes into running a nonprofit business, and there are real costs involved. We need to continue to invest in the development of nonprofit professionals. The state partnering with nonprofits to deliver these essential services to communities will be way better off as we continue to invest and grow the professionals that are in the sector. They'll be delivering better programs, more efficient, and again, compliant with what we need to do to garner more funding for the state. We need to engage mid and smaller organizations. I know that a lot of the contracts and agreements, especially with the state government, work with our much larger organizations. I'd love to be able to explore opportunities to make these opportunities to partner with the state more available to smaller and mid-sized nonprofits, where a contract with the state to provide some of the services they might be a real game changer for their ability to deliver services and grow as an organization. And then lastly, as federal investments wane in Nevada, we just need to embrace it proactively to deliver it. Again, the nonprofits are on the front lines. The professionals do a lot of work, and recognizing the hard work that's in front of them, the constraints, the stresses that come with funding, it's very difficult to deal with sometimes in the sector, and we would just love the support of our elected officials and our decision makers. So thank you. That's my presentation. I'd love to answer any questions.
And thank you for the presentation. We do have some questions for you down south. We'll start off with Assemblymember Nguyen.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for that very robust presentation. I know that nonprofit is truly changing the conversation in terms of closing the gaps and be able to create conversations around folks looking at nonprofit as a completely new industry. My question in terms of professional development, and I know that, of course, your counterpart in the South, Nevada Grant Lab, is doing amazing work with you. Perhaps I'll ask them this question too and see what they come up with. But in terms of professional development with the nonprofit sector, has there been conversations around putting, some sort of educational equivalent inside our higher ed system in terms of professional development, like a nonprofit certificate, some sort of degree in nonprofit management? I know that we have folks that may want to learn about the industry and learning about being in nonprofit as a career choice versus just a stopover. So I wonder if you can talk more about, has there been initiatives around that?
Jeff Bryant. And the answer is yes. There's been a lot of conversations that I know that I have had with our colleagues. One of my board directors is Dr. Brad Johnson at the University of Nevada. He oversees public administration, the master's program there, and he's very keenly interested in trying to develop a track for nonprofit professionals in that. I've also had preliminary conversations with the College of Business at the University of Nevada, Reno, around developing some sort of bachelor degree, undergrad degree. And again, with the partnerships that I've had at the cooperative extension offices, looking at how do we access extended studies. There used to be a course offered on nonprofit management. That course no longer exists. and it's there. And then lastly, I also talk with colleagues at Truckee Meadows Community College about looking at maybe there's an associate's track that we could potentially explore. So there is interest. There are conversations happening with our colleagues in higher education. I think some of the trick is funding to develop these courses, and I think general capacity to deliver them. But they are ongoing, and I would love to continue the conversation if that's something that we could do.
Quick follow-up, Chair.
Please.
Thank you. So I want to make sure we quantify this a little bit. You say there's a lot of interest, and I know you said earlier there's 16,000 nonprofits in Nevada, and cooperative extension used to have a course and then it went away, maybe because of demands. But do you happen to be able to quantify those interests? And if you don't have the answer right now, it's fine. I guess I'm just trying to figure out how we can be more supportive in this arena. I mean, nonprofit, no secret. For those of you that know my professional background, that is the work I get to do every day, and it's one of the best jobs in the world. And so I definitely want to continue this conversation offline, but I just want to gauge to see in terms of interest, when you quantify it, is there enough to put something back on the table?
Jeff Bryant. And yes, I do believe so. I think in my previous comment, I think the interest I was sharing is interest from higher education and trying to explore different entry levels for nonprofit professionals to engage at different points in their career. Back to the survey results that we received from last summer, I think I'd have to go backwards from there, but it's 74-ish%. Nonprofit professionals are looking for these new opportunities. I do think there is some. I think a great starting point is what Director Sanders and Mr. Dixon have already put together with their certified grant writing and grant management programs. But I think we can continue to add more, and I believe there is enough demand to pull something off. I think if we do move down that track, I think it's making sure that it's a high quality and an engaging program.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Members, any additional questions? Assemblymember Flanagan? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for the presentation. My question or comment hinges along the lines of the 16,000 nonprofits that you mentioned and the effort to arrive at greater connectivity. And I'm wondering if the nonprofits or groups that we're looking at, what nonprofits provide which services in terms of where the duplicity is in the overlap, and in the effort to create the connectivity, would it help them to align or to collaborate without consequence so that they can maybe more strategically allocate their resources and better use the dollars? And how can we help you achieve that if it's not happening as effectively as it could?
Jeff Bryant. Thank you. That's a very good question. It's a conversation that we've had across the board of how to not just map what our nonprofit sector is. We don't have a really sharp idea. That's where I think some of the work we've started in Northern Nevada, the work we're doing with the cooperative extension to identify the overlaps and gaps are important. I'd imagine our colleagues again at Grant Labs have a better handle on what Las Vegas may look like. But yes, the idea would be to convene. One of the projects that we've been working on as far as the Center for Nonprofit Business goes is to establish what we're calling just sector circles. We want to invite and convene nonprofits with similarly aligned missions to have facilitated conversations. We want to have them get together and not just know who's who and who may be doing what, but explore ways to collaborate. As we discussed, the pinch on funding for nonprofits is going to be becoming more and more strained, I do believe. And I think the opportunities for collaboration will really enhance our ability to continue services across programs and limiting gaps. As far as support, I don't, from the state body, I don't have an answer right now, but I would love to continue the conversation and explore ways that we can make that work.
Thank you. Members, any additional questions? Seeing none in Las Vegas, do we have any questions by Senator Krasner or Carson City, please? Seeing and hearing none, thank you again for the presentation. We look forward to working with you as well during the interim and hopefully finding some solutions, or better said, ways to continue to collaborate. We won't find any solutions, but I think we can continue to work together.
Thank you guys so much.
Next, we'll move down to Las Vegas. I do see Mr. Miles Dixon, Chief Executive Officer and President of the Nevada Grant Lab. Thank you for joining us whenever you're ready.
Thanks so much for having me, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. Just want to double check if you need me to pull up the presentation. Probably. Hold on one second. Make sure you can view that. Awesome. Cool. Thank you all so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. Before I jump into my presentation, I want to quickly acknowledge Jeff Bryant and the work that the Center for Nonprofit Business is doing in Northern Nevada and rural Nevada. Jeff has really launched quite a few great programs, and we're looking forward to seeing those grow. Likewise, I want to acknowledge Director Sanders and the great work that she and her team at OFA are doing. As some of you may be familiar, Director Sanders runs an office that was initially created in 2011. The Office of Grant Coordination and Procurement Management, and it actually started out of response to the recession and a demand and an expectation from the legislature and community partners across the state to do more to get our fair share of federal funding. And the conversation about a centralized grants office really started in earnest in 2011. Ultimately, what resulted from 3 different bills was one consensus bill that created the office, but staffed it only with 3 people and gave it virtually no accountability, no authority, and no resources to do the monumental work of coordinating federal funding across the state of Nevada. In 2020, that bill that Director mentioned, 445, expanded the office in a pretty significant and material way. And while the office is still a long way from where I think the director, myself, and so many others want it to be, it is important to recognize that I think the director is making tremendous progress. Her and her team are doing, I think, really solid work and moving in the right direction of a centralized office. What is also true is that on the horizon is probably the most significant reshaping of federal funding in 40 years or perhaps 100 years. And the work of coordinating federal funding flows, drawdowns, et cetera, is both getting more complex and more urgent as we speak. It is also getting more possible as we speak through things like digital infrastructure and technology. And so, yes, it is about position count. It is also about technology and coordination. And most importantly, it is about a culture that understands and appreciates the importance of pulling these dollars down and getting them to use, getting them to their best use. So with that, I'll jump into my presentation. I'm going to try to keep this relatively quick. I was asked to provide a quick overview of our organization and then talk about federal funding. So Nevada Grant Lab is a nonprofit based here in Las Vegas. We do some work Southern Nevada or statewide, but the majority of our work is focused here in Southern Nevada. Really, in short, our objective is to get nonprofits the resources they need to do their best work. We think of resources including money, of course, but also skills and partnership and data and access. We are a nonprofit. We're a 501c3 ourselves. We're primarily funded by private philanthropy here in the South, as well as a few great local government partnerships. The City of Henderson, Clark County, and City of North Las Vegas help fund our work, which we really appreciate. We run 4 different programs: capacity building, which is learning and professional development, technical assistance, hands-on support from experts. We would do grant services, which is helping write grants, review grants, that sort of work. We also have something, a work area we call building the movement, which is around policy and data and advocacy and partnerships. I want to dive in just for a second and talk about the capacity building work. This runs at everything from 90-minute introductory workshops in a virtual setting through a 9-month leadership program that we end up putting unrestricted cash in the hands of nonprofit leaders and organizations. It really runs the gamut from very introductory to very advanced, We welcome hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of nonprofit professionals every single year now to these programs across scores of different organizations. And we cover offering areas of all the sorts of basics of nonprofit operations, fundraising, finance, audit, et cetera, as well as things like communications and partnership development. We run technical assistance, which is more advanced hands-on support. So as we can all probably appreciate, going to a workshop on how to build a budget or a program evaluation, when we get back to our desks, we often have to say, what did she say? How did they do that? And so what we endeavor to do is provide hands-on support that is aligned to the training so that folks have both access to a good professional development opportunity and support, hopefully, when they get back to their desks to start doing that work. Grant services really is where we started as an organization. We started in 2020, in May 2020, with the objective of trying to provide resources to community organizations, whether they were nonprofits, local government, higher education, even the state, to make sure that they had access to highly skilled federal grant writers, so that if there was a federal grant opportunity available to them, that they had the access to technical support to be able to write that application and be prepared for administration. So far, we've helped partners secure more than $300 million in new grant funding awarded to Nevada. And I want to be very clear, that is new grant funding to Nevada that is largely discretionary, competitive dollars that would have otherwise not reached this state, but for those nonprofits taking it upon themselves to do the very hard work of identifying, applying for, and ultimately administering those dollars. So obviously they're helping fund services for folks across the Nevada, and I really do mean across Nevada. What they're also doing is creating jobs and economic activity that support our communities. I want to shift gears now and talk a little bit about federal funds. Federal grants, I think, can sometimes be an abstract concept. Some of us see it as a program issue. Some of it see it as a finance issue or a government thing. The reality is that federal grants are playing a vital role in funding services in every single corner of our state, in every community, every single day. They fund everything from education, so think about after-school wraparound support services. They fund workforce development. They fund the arts, housing, medical care, both primary as well as behavioral. Federal funding in so many ways is the bedrock of how we fund in this country and in this state and in this community so many services that are important for folks. Of course, federal funding starts with each of us. It starts with us as taxpayers. It starts with you, your constituents, your neighbors, your family. All of us help fund federal services. Those federal dollars are collected through tax revenue, other sources, federal agencies, as you know, pass budgets, hopefully, sometimes to the director's point, more and more continuing resolutions. Those dollars then flow back to communities all across this country. The vast majority of federal money starts in a state government coffer. That's the first place when it leaves a state agency. It's going to, it leaves a federal agency. For the most part, federal dollars flow to states. States then flow them down, local governments, nonprofits, faith-based organizations in some cases. In other instances, fewer instances, those dollars flow directly to local governments like a county, and in even fewer instances, they flow directly to nonprofits. So it's not just one path. We have multiple paths when we're talking about the flow of federal dollars. But I think at Grant Lab, we are always starting with the belief that those dollars start here in Nevada, and they should end here in Nevada, and preferably do the most impact. To give you a sense of what scale is in nonprofits, 503 nonprofits received $1.25 billion in 2021. Those are federal dollars through that whole mix of pass-throughs. So when we're talking about federal money, it's not one grant here, one grant there. It's also not just grants in one issue or another issue. This table from the Urban Institute that focuses on the flow of 2021 dollars, I think, does a really good job of helping all of us understand the various uses for federal dollars. What it also helps us understand is in that second column to the right, the implications of not having federal money. So that second column would show budgets of those organizations if we were to adjust out all federal dollars. You'll see pretty much every one of them is in the negative. Most are in 2 digits, right? So we're really talking about 10% to a third loss. Now, I think even those of us that are really concerned about the flow of federal dollars right now understand not all federal dollars are leaving. This scenario is not going to happen. We're not going to lose all 1.25 billion. But when we think about how fragile Nevada's nonprofit ecosystem, and I would argue in some ways local and state government services, I think we all understand nothing is overly funded here. And in many cases, things aren't even adequately funded. So if we see a swing of 10 or 20% reductions, that adds up to something really, really significant for Nevada nonprofits. And again, not just a few of them, not just those in health and human services, or maybe those in research. This is across the board. Another way to look at that same data is thinking about organization size. I think often we think about different nonprofit sizes and maybe only the really, really big ones get federal dollars. It's actually not the case. We see federal dollars flowing to organizations with budgets of just $100,000 and above. In some cases, even less. So federal money isn't overly concentrated in one issue area, one org type, or for that matter, one region. Instead, more than 500 nonprofits are counting on more than $1.25 billion in revenue from this one set of sources. And so really understanding how it impacts us is key. Another way to kind of think about Nevada's nonprofit sector, we did a sector analysis in 2023, and quick technical note, a lot of data in the nonprofit sector, financially speaking, is trailing by 18 to 24 months because of reporting periods. This is looking at 2021 data for the most part. And the picture's just like Jeff and other people have described. The sector is undersized, underfunded, and understaffed. When we zoom into the Las Vegas region, here in our community compared to peers like San Antonio, New Orleans, and Orlando, we spend less than 20 cents on the dollar in our nonprofit sector. Those regions have an average per capita spending of more than $4,000. Ours is $793. I think that's really important when we ask questions about why are we not seeing the needle move on this issue or that issue? Because it is not realistic to expect the needle to move when we spend 20 cents on the dollar. Some other important ways to think about the sector is cash on hand. You heard from Jeff, our nonprofits have a lot less liquidity and financial stability than they would like, than we would like, and their peers have. When you have just 3 months cash on hand, and ultimately your federal grant or your state grant or your local grant is slow on reimbursement, it literally gets organizations sometimes to the place of not knowing how they're going to make the next payroll. More importantly, arguably, how they're going to serve clients the next day. So that sort of liquidity is a real problem. The other side of this page shows you, even with that kind of dearth of resources, it still adds up to more than 620 total active organizations. For us, we define an active organization as an organization that has one full-time employee and $1 of expense. So that number of 16,000 plus that exist on paper shrinks to just 620 that have one employee and $1 of expense. That said, it still accounts for more than $3 billion of expenditures in the state and employs more than 46,000 people, which make it about the 8th largest industry in the state. I want to wrap up on a few recommendations around federal funding. I think that we really do find ourselves at a pretty extraordinary moment. I think that's a lot to say when we think about the recession that was just 15 years ago, or the COVID-19 pandemic and all of the emergency aid that flowed with it, which was just 5 years ago, but is still in the system. I think the reality is that federal funding, at least the way we see both dollars and policy shaping up in DC right now, is poised to reshape how state governments, how local governments, how institutions of higher education and K-12 and nonprofits are operating. I don't think it's an overstatement, at least my view, to say that we really are, I think, at the start of what will be a pretty long process to see that reshaping. I also want to acknowledge that while it may feel sudden for some folks, the reality is there are different changes that have been percolating on a bipartisan basis in Congress, in the White House for a long time about how nonprofits work. and expectations of how federal dollars are flowing. So regardless of what happens this year or the next Congress, I do think that there is a significant shift underway, and I think it's important to start recognizing that. Really key to all of being able to navigate through this is partnerships. Being able to really work across the levels of state government, local governments, nonprofits, and yes, of course, coordinating amongst themselves at every level, whether it's state agency to state agency, local government to local government, nonprofit to nonprofit, but also up and down that chain, I think is becoming more and more important as we speak. In order to do that, I think we first have to start addressing the things that have long hindered our progress. We really have to do improvements to the payment and performance systems that we already have in place. This last session, Grant Lab worked with many partners, including the Center for Nonprofit Business, the United Way of Southern Nevada, and so many others, to advance legislation to help address prompt payment and advance payment. Federal grants and state grants often work on reimbursement. Slow reimbursement times, the lack of advance payments, coupled with that low liquidity, makes it very, very, very hard to deliver services, especially when someone misses a day or a snowstorm comes or whatever else, right? Those payment times are critical. We really have to improve them. I want to acknowledge the state agency staff that we met throughout the legislative session, who I think widely agree and deeply believe in the need to fix some of these things and understand the importance nonprofits are playing. Was reminded by that process of how many great state agency staff we have that do understand these are challenges that exist on both sides. Advancing too much funding to nonprofits creates a set of risks and challenges on the state agency side. Not advancing any creates the boundary or the challenge on the other side. We have to find a way to balance the complexity of this work that we haven't yet found in the state. Likewise, the state really does need to invest in long overdue technology and positions. In 2011, 15 years ago, the state started talking about a centralized grants management office. We still aren't there. In 2015, we funded a centralized grants management system, the technology side of that. Never implemented. We still aren't there. And now we face what I think is probably the most significant change in federal funding that may last for years and years or decades and decades. We need the sort of technology, the position counts, and the culture that I think so many people in the state actually do understand is needed. We just haven't quite implemented it yet. That work becomes more critical as we speak. Finally, I want to acknowledge there's this giant shift happening in federal funding, not just in terms of dollars and policy, but actually administration responsibilities. It'll begin with SNAP and in programs across the U.S. Department of Education. Those laws are already passed. This isn't a theoretical or a conceptual. We are starting to see in 2027 the shift for program administration from federal agencies down to state agencies. That's going to present a lot of challenges around how do you staff this work? What is the position count? What are the technologies, et cetera? So the same sort of challenges that we've long needed to fix but haven't adequately. What it's also going to present is more decisions and policy choices. Most likely some of these grants are going to come in the form of block grants with a little less restriction than perhaps we're seeing more, and in some cases, more restriction. But the responsibility for administering a block grant is very different than the responsibility for administering a really specifically defined discretionary competitive grant that came with every single rule fully baked in. It's going to require us as a state to think about how we want to deliver services and then be able to actually align dollars and the flow of grants aligned to that new vision for how we want to operate services. So again, I just want to flag, yes, we're seeing fewer dollars, fewer grants, lots of changes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What we have not yet seen, but is absolutely on the horizon, is a shift in responsibility to administer programs from the federal agencies to state agencies. Being prepared for that is not a one agency exercise. That is an exercise that is state, local government, and nonprofits together. I think that sort of coordination has always been beneficial and now is moving into a place where it's critical. So with that, I'll stop and say thank you again so much for the opportunity to appear, and happy to take any questions.
And thank you for the presentation. And I really do mean it when I say thank you. I know we've had conversations for some years now, and also 2020 was a rough year to do anything. So we appreciate you stepping up and helping our state. Members, any questions? Senator Neal, please.
Thanks, Chair. So I was looking at the last bullet point where you were like, the state needs to work with nonprofits and local governments to prepare for the shift in programming and funding responsibilities. How do you suggest that that actually manifests itself within this particular environment, being that we're going to be in this environment until, God willing, 2028?
Thanks for the question, Senator. Miles Dixon, Nevada Grant Lab. I actually think there's two pieces there. I want to talk about the timing one around 2028. I think that regardless of how anybody feels about the current policy, the current administration, et cetera, I actually do think that we are at an early stage of a significant shift in how federal funding works. I think it, for me, lines up a little bit to how philanthropy has been working over the last 10 years. So I think many of these changes will outlast this Congress, this administration, so on and so forth. So I would just say I don't think, for me at least, I don't necessarily see a 180 every 2 years or 4 years happening regardless of the party. I think that the way that federal funding has been evolving makes it harder and harder to kind of change course. So that's just my thoughts on timeline. In terms of like, what is a functional way you get people to start working together? I think that one of them that's a really straightforward one is recognizing what's already passed in federal law. So things like the shift in SNAP, the changes in the Department of Education. I think organizing the stakeholders who are already working in that space, so thinking about State Department of fill in the blank, working with, in the case of Department Ed, the local education authorities, down to the nonprofits who are providing wraparound support, actually starting to get those folks in the same room, reviewing and understanding the legislation so that we really clearly understand this program that has historically been funded out of an office in DC will now move in the form of a block grant with fewer dollars that the state probably is going to have to match to Carson City. They're going to have to make some decisions about how to administer that program, what's eligible, how dollars will flow, what will the grant applications look like, what will reporting look like, and then ultimately making some choices about how we want to administer it. I think it has to start with just getting the folks who are already kind of involved in that space but may not be having that conversation in the same room. And I think that exercise can be repeated across multiple different very specific discrete grant programs, as well as even zooming up to think about it like at an agency or issue level.
Can I follow?
Please follow up.
So I want to ask an additional question and just kind of set it up with an example. So when we had it was a couple meetings ago at IFC, and OSIT came to us and they had to resubmit their grant for broadband, right? And laying out broadband without the state. And when they resubmitted, there were a lot of things, right? So they didn't have to go and talk to vulnerable communities. They actually didn't have to do some of the public noticing. And there were very key, I think, issues within the reissuance of the grant that, for me, caused consternation, mainly because there was no requirement to talk to who it was going to be impacted, right? And one of the statements that I made on the record was, all money is not good money if at the end result is going to be the disenfranchisement of communities of color in which the grant was set up to serve. And I see a lot of local governments and state governments going after grants because they're like, I'd rather get the money, even though these communities are going to be excommunicated from this process, or the spend on these dollars. So when I think about that as the broad trend under this administration, it gives me pause when folks are going after certain dollars and they're coordinating to get those dollars, but the same groups, which are the reasons why we might have created a community needs assessment or other issues, is why we were trying to go after the dollars in the first place. And now those communities are no longer a part of the equation, but they're like, oh, well, we'll get the money anyway and do what we can. And I think that's a problem, right? And I want to know internally, how are groups having a conversation around, should we go after this money, knowing that it disenfranchises communities that really, really need to be served in Nevada? Is that a conversation?
Miles Dixon, Nevada Grant Lab. First of all, I totally agree that not all money is good money. I think that it's important for an applicant to understand the requirements of that grant and how it advances their organization's mission, whether that is a nonprofit or a local government or state government. I know at Grant Lab, we're pretty big advocates for trying to get our fair share and only doing that where funding is actually a fit for an organization, whether it's mission alignment or their organizational readiness. So I 100% agree with you. I think that there's a really important analysis to do that genuinely is a legal analysis to do of where there may have been a requirement by this administration or that administration, so a previous administration, and before that, a different administration, and before that, a different administration, right? The difference between requirements and what still is possible to do. And so I think that's a really important analysis that folks need to go through right now, is that something may have been a requirement in the original grant agreement that now has been pulled out and is no longer a requirement. Well, is it still allowable? Those are actually different things. That requires an analysis on a grant by grant basis. Can you still go and talk to the community you serve? If you can't, I think there's a business decision or a nonprofit or a government decision to make, like, should you go after that money? But I think it's really important to understand the distinction of required and allowable, offering no opinion on what something should or shouldn't be. But there is a distinction, and that has to be looked into, I think, on a grant by grant basis. Finally, I think our view at Grant Lab is community engagement is a must. I don't know how you run great programs if you don't talk to the people who are involved in programs. And so I think finding ways to do that, and I think that challenge and opportunity predated this administration and these changes. And candidly, I don't know that we've done that super well in this state or well enough. I think that there's a lot of opportunity to think and actually invest in, and I want to underline that, invest in community engagement. I think we talk a lot about things like collaboration. Well, if no one's willing to fund a position that actually is needed to do collaboration, it's not going to happen. So we actually have to invest in that community engagement, make sure that it is allowable. And I'll deviate a little bit from the federal funding conversation for a moment and recognize the state still has dollars, and I know limited dollars. Philanthropy is the same. If we can't fund something that previously was funded by the federal government, or for that matter, the state government or local government or philanthropy, we need to look at other sources of funding if we still agree that work is vital.
Please follow.
Thank you for that response. I have it's a different question. It's more of a long-term view, right? You've been around, not necessarily in the Grant Lab capacity, but you've been in the building for a really long time. So when you think about long-term view, I remember in 2011 when we were in the recession, we're having conversation around, trying to get more of the pie. I know my particular opinion at the time was, in the economic development framework, that we should not be so dependent on the federal government because of its fickle behavior, which you just elicited to in a way, right? That there is a constant change of administration and there's different behaviors. And that a state being beholden to the federal government on clear social safety net programs is a problem for the state. Mainly because their economic strategy is dependent on whether or not the government will care about their need versus the economic strategy that should be developed in order for you to sustain your own people. And I feel, although this grant conversation is happening, right, from a revenue perspective and stability, when I look back from 2011 to now, I don't feel that it has been a stable venture for the state of Nevada, right? Because we fly in and out of these political talking points, fair share, and rather than actually doing the work of establishing a true revenue structure that is going to serve the needs of the people in Nevada, right? Because it has always been fickle, and we have always been on the short end, and we found in the, I'm not blaming COVID or any of that, but I'm saying that before COVID money even came in, we were still in a fickle place that had nothing to do with this current administration, who just happened to go crazy. And then we were like, wait, now we're getting clipped on all of the things that we really, really need. And we already have our hand in the pot and don't have a backup plan, a revenue strategy in order to make any of this make sense. And then we were at the will of the federal government to go and beg and say, I'll do your terms. However you deliver the carrot, I'll take the carrot. Even though it's Satan's carrot, I'm going to get it. You know what I'm saying? That's literally what happened. And I feel like our conversation should be slightly different on how we create stability in Nevada without the federal handout. But, because it flips me literally back to 2011, where that's how I started, because that's what I now once again believe after I was like, wait, well, I'll stop being a critic. I'll watch the flow. We're more than a decade in. I'm not sure this is appropriate strategy for Nevada. That's my 2 cents. Thank you, Chair. Oh God. Okay.
Senator, I'd love a chance to respond. Miles Dixon, Nevada Grant Lab. First, happy 15th anniversary. 2011 was my first session too. And so yes, I think we've both seen this conversation ebb and flow. So look, Nevada has this really terrible distinction of being the state that essentially does the worst in getting its per capita fair share of federal dollars. And by worst, I don't want to leave that as a question mark. That's 55th in the nation in the U.S. Department of Education. It's 54th in HHS, which is particularly wild when you think about Nevada being a healthcare expansion state. So worst of the worst in terms of getting our fair share. What is also true is Nevada is actually the most reliant state in the entire country on federal money, and it is because of the rest of the revenue structure. So both of those things are true at the same time. We see the least federal per capita investment, and we are the most reliant on federal money because of the state's revenue structure. So I would offer, I don't think those are mutually exclusive problems to try to solve. I do think Nevada should have a strategy to get and maximize federal resources, particularly aligned to an actual strategy of the services we want to deliver in the state, not simply to drive revenue. I don't think it's a good revenue strategy. I think it is one of many revenues that we should be pursuing. And simultaneously, we do have to reconcile the fact that if we want to not have that relationship, we will have to generate revenue elsewhere. And I say generate revenue very lightly in this building. You all will have to figure that out. There are other revenue sources in the nonprofit world. There is philanthropy. There are program service income opportunities. Program service income is actually the top source of revenue for nonprofits all across the country. We don't do so well in this state. So we have a lot of revenue to really be tapping that we have not yet tapped. And I do think that the reliance on one thing or the other creates this like whiplash. And most importantly, it just leaves the people who are counting on services, whether it's arts or workforce development in rural Nevada or in East Las Vegas, really vulnerable. We have to build out our revenue strategy. That revenue strategy actually has to support a program strategy.
Members, any additional questions? Seeing none, Carson City or Senator Krasner via Zoom. Seeing none, thank you again for the presentation. We look forward to working alongside of you during the interim. And please, if there's anything that comes up that maybe we didn't address today, or questions and or ways we can collaborate, please let us know.
Thanks, Chair.
Thank you again. We'll go ahead and close out that presentation. And next on the agenda, you'll see discussion of collaborative efforts to address the unhoused population and abandoned vehicles and trailers in Southern Nevada. I am not suggesting that that is all one big lump sum of a conversation. Just to be clear, it's just that we realize that a lot of the folk who are going to be addressing and discussing unhoused issues are also the same individuals we wanted to invite to have the conversation about abandoned vehicles and issues with the trailers. We've been working on those two separate issues with the same kind of community partners. So that's the only reason it reads like that. I just don't want anybody to read it any other way than the fact that partners are working on both of these issues. Members, as you may recall, there was conversations that happened during last session. I know particularly in my district, and Senator Neal, who just walked out, we had been having lengthy conversations about constituents expressing a lot of concerns as to abandoned vehicles and trailers in different areas of our community, often moving from one corner to the other. And that's just kind of touching the very tip of that very complex issue. So we are going to have all of you, I don't know specifically if you all coordinated a way that you wanted to address the issues or the conversation, better said. We do have a few of you on the agenda, but my understanding is at least one of the individuals will not be joining us today, but I think the rest of the folk are here. So if you all would like to, we specifically here don't have a particular order that we can go in. If you all had coordinated something prior to that, we can do that. If not, let's just go in the order that appears here, and that works for us. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Flores, members of the committee. Good to see you all. Feels like a family reunion a little bit. It's good to see everyone. My name is Adrian Hunt, and I represent the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department. I'm here today to present a brief overview of Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department's outreach efforts with the unhoused population. I do have handouts in the back. Again, I was pretty much told that it needs to be a brief overview, so that's what I planned. But if you guys need any slideshows or, you know, all the bells and whistles, I do have them if you need it. All right. Okay. Nationwide, 771,480 people experience homelessness, according to the HUD data reports of 2024. Southern Nevada's PIT account, which is the PIT in time of January 2024, counted 7,906 individuals that were unhoused in the Southern Nevada area. The past PIT account, which was January 29th of 2026, it takes approximately about 6 to 9 months for that public report to be authored and released. That report is very important to us because it gives us data and guides policy, funding, and system planning. LVMPD and outreach teams, Hope and Outreach team, which is also called the HOT team, is a specialized outreach unit. It provides daily community outreach. Its mission is to connect unhoused individuals to services. Also working with strong nonprofits, faith-based, and community partners. Our 2025 impact, we've contacted 5,155 unhoused population, 1,402 connected to services, and 217 exited homelessness. Other collaborations and specialized programs and partnerships are the Coordinated Outreach Programs Group, which they meet monthly to share trends, funding updates, and outreach planning. CARE Homeless Outreach Team, which is the Clark County Social Services, also provides transportation and case management. Our LIMA program, Law Enforcement Intervention for Mental Health and Addiction, in partnership with the 8th Judicial Court, is a 9 to 12-month recovery program, which to date we have more than 200 plus graduates. This produced also a less than 5% recidivism, which has shown sustainable outcomes. Another partnership that we have is the LVMPD Giving Project, which provides food, clothing, hygiene, and referrals, which we have served 5,498 in the year of 2025 of receiving assistance. As of 2022 to 2025, we have served 18,957 unhoused population was assisted. Our primary concern of addressing the safety is also a main concern for us for the unhoused individuals in the broader community. And we do that by an unhoused violent crime working group that consists of multiple area command leaderships, our community-oriented policing teams, the Clark County Detention Center, social services, and the Office of Community Engagement, which is out of our headquarters. Of course, what we all feel would be considerably impactful is with the unhoused population is what's upcoming is the Campus for Hope, which is projected to open in summer of 2028. I think a lot of our key challenge, which I'm sure you will hear across the board from different jurisdictions and agencies, would be the lack of affordable housing for our unhoused population. Also rental and employment barriers due to credit, background, and employment screening obstacles. Of course, mental health conditions, which is untreated conditions and limited access to care. Substance use disorders, addiction without adequate treatment. We know that can definitely be a challenge, and evictions and transportation barriers. Our future priorities is to strengthen housing partnerships, expand second chance housing, and improve transportation access. Overall, what we've seen for the best practice from our agency is Houston, Texas. They have a regional homeless response system called The Way Home. And what their system does is it brings together 100 plus partners as a regional approach. As of 2014, they have 28,000 plus that were placed into permanent housing. So that's definitely been phenomenal what they're doing out there. As we move forward, our Sheriff Kevin McMahill has been clear. Homelessness can't be solved through arrest. Real progress comes from connection to services, coordinated outreach, and partnerships that help people stabilize. Our approach is to protect public safety while treating every interaction as a chance to offer help first. Lasting change happens when we meet people with dignity. If we want a safer Las Vegas, we have to inject our community with humanity, leading with compassion, accountability, and the commitment to help our neighbors find a way out, not just move them along. As of our tow and abandoned vehicles, I do have a few numbers that were provided to me from our Las Vegas Township constables. Of course, we only had 4 months since the law passed, so getting the data in that 4 months was a little challenging, is what was told from me from the Office of the Las Vegas Township Constables. As of October, we had 40 junk tows. November, we had 24 junk tows. In December, 51. And as of January, we have 44. Some of these vehicles towed were classified under both junk and abandoned. That concludes my brief overview. I will stand by for questions.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hunt. Members, any questions? Senator Neal, please.
I'm sorry. Thank you for the presentation, but so I know you're saying that, you know, there's empathy and we're really trying to make things work in terms of, you know, just not moving them along. So is is the issue of not just moving the homeless from one boundary to another not happening anymore? Because that was distinctly happening, right? So if they were in North Las Vegas, then maybe North Las Vegas would move them to Vegas, or Vegas would move them to North Las Vegas, or Metro would move them to Boulder Highway, and then it's like, hey, well, it's Henderson's problem now. So is that no longer happening? You guys have stopped that behavior?
So Adrian Hunt, for the record, talking to my coworkers, my colleagues, Officer Henderson, who was actually served as in the section of the hot team, the issue he saw, again, he boots to the ground, was that we give the services, all the wraparound services, and it's on them to take them in and pretty much, utilize them. You'll find out a lot of people that are unhoused, they don't want the services. So we still, of course, on a daily basis, like I explained, the hot team, they go out every day and they provide these services. But that was the only disconnect that I've heard from officers with the unhoused population. But other than that, we do our part every day to go out and give resources and provide resources.
So, follow-up, Chair?
Please.
So when Metro, okay, so I'm going to take MLK Mount Moriah. So let's say we have a homeless person who we know looks like they have some kind of mental issue. Starbucks calls. Metro is clearly the only agency that's supposed to respond because it's their jurisdiction. What exactly are the services that Metro offers, or who do they contact when they encounter that particular kind of person who is at a business establishment? Because I can tell, and I'm not blaming, well, I probably am. Okay, I'm not blaming you. But I know that I have specifically ended up calling like DHS. Like at the time Whitley was in his position, and I was like, who's on the street team? Because I know we were funding street teams. And I was just like, this is a situation that is continually occurring. Who can come out and deal with this and try to figure out how to do the services and wrap around? I have never seen Metro have a conversation and try to figure out, or maybe it's happened. I haven't seen the coordination. So tell me how many instances where that kind of coordination happens, and who is the go-to? Do you contact the county? Do you contact the city of Las Vegas homeless team? Because my understanding that the homeless team for the city of Las Vegas only deals with the corridor. The, Las Vegas Boulevard, Main, and some other spaces. They don't actually come all the way up. Well, that's what I was told. They don't come all the way up to MLK. That even though it's the jurisdiction of Metro, but the Las Vegas team doesn't come up there. So who is the go-to, I'm going to dial such and such? Who is it?
Adrian Hunt, for the record. So sitting there, I can almost tell you we don't. And as far as our hot team, and we have other sections that provide assistance to our unpopulated, we don't pass off to anyone. Of course, we're going to offer what we offer. If they're going to take the resources we give them, they take them. I've stated the numbers that we've had in 2025, which again were near 5,155 people were contacted. 1,402 were connected to service, and 217 were exited of homelessness. So again, we do our part as far as giving them the resources. It's on them if they provide to take one. I know my captain just stepped up if he wants to.
Yeah, Josh Martinez, for the record, Las Vegas Metro captain, chair, through you to Senator Neal. We appreciate the questions, and I think Officer Hunt did a good job with the overview. And what you're saying is we're stopping at the borders and we're moving people along. I could speak from practical terms as being out there as a captain and running an area command. Is our job is to provide the services to the homeless person that we encounter in the scenario that you're giving. And we will contact our Office of Community Engagement, and the community engagement has all of the partners and the NGOs that we partner with on a regular basis. And we also have the CRT teams, the crisis response teams that are out there. As you know, there was a piece of legislation last session as well that dealt with that. And those ambulances are in North Las Vegas, and they also are in the county. And then we also have the service now of the county facility out on East Lake Mead that we could take these folks to. So we're not just going to try to push them along out of the Starbucks and give them a trespass citation or arrest them for the unhoused camping. We're actually a regional effort in coordination now, and you're going to hear that from our county partners as well as our city folks.
So thank you for that response. So can you provide offline who is the mental health contact if Metro is called? Who is the mental health contact or resource? Who is the typical go-to that handles someone who may be having a mental issue and thereby a business? This is not random. This happens at Starbucks. This happens at Walgreens. This is super deep. Once you make it past, I would say, the East Side Bonanza, like, it gets real. So I'm trying to figure out who is the go-to, right, that comes out that is a part of this structured coordination.
Chair Flores, to you, through you to Senator Neal, that coordination is going to be the regional coordination. And with UMC now having their doors open for us to go there, I just took a tour of that facility about a couple weeks ago. We'll be able to use the CRT teams. They were there with us on the tour. Have the CRT teams come over, provide that mental professional help on scene. We'll be able to do a handoff with them, take them to the facility. And it's about 5 to 10 minutes. The officers will drop off and the facility will do the assessment. And then they'll start to provide the medical assisted treatment if that's necessary, because they have that capability. And then they'll be able to stabilize them and get them to the proper resources. But they also have social worker on scene that'll connect them to the other NGOs that are there. And the officers, which is very unique with this situation that I didn't have, or Officer Hunt didn't have when he was out there working the streets, is we could take them over there in a patrol car now. Back in the day, our only resource was to, as you probably have heard, put them in an ambulance and flood the emergency rooms, which then causes another issue with people that are in real medical crisis. And now we have a new facility.
So thank you for that response. So offline, I would like to know, because I know for a fact on MLK, there are multiple, there's like 3 or 4, but there's an individual that I see all this time. I know he has a mental health condition. I know he does. I know that he used to have a caretaker in the neighborhood off of Matt Kelly who passed away almost like 10 years ago. And this same individual will walk that same area. He just moves from different spaces and underneath the tree or bush or in some clove. But I have never seen anyone approach this individual, contact this person, and deal with what's going on. Like, he is just roaming from environment to environment. And I see it all the time. And that's why I'm just like, so you can just tell me offline, because I want to know who go-to is. Want to know what I'm going to do? I'm going to call them, right? Next time I see them, I am going to dial whoever it is that is supposed to show up. And I'm going to sit and wait. I'm going to watch until somebody shows up.
Again, Josh Martinez for the record, through the chair to Senator Neal. As my partner, Detective Hunt, said, was they're service resistant. And we don't know all of those scenarios that are out there that are service resistant. I would have to get this individual's name, see if our homeless coordinator and our Office of Community Engagement and our office have made contact with this individual, and they may be service related. But also, there's different levels of mental crisis. And if they're in a mental crisis and they meet the legal 2000 hold, that's another option for our officers out there to place the person on hold. But if they're just simply service resistant, it's not a crime to be mentally ill. It's not a crime to be unhoused out there. But we would like to, that if you make that call, it'll always, more often than not, I haven't worked the streets as a line cop or a supervisor for some time. It'll be an officer, and that's the way it's always been. The officer will make contact. We'll have CRT come over, especially there where you're describing. That's the city. I know they have the CRT abilities. Come over, take that individual, make the mental health assessment. But if that person is unwilling to go and they don't meet legal 2000, that's still the conundrum that we're in.
May I add?
I know for a fact that there is a gap between Black persons who might be schizophrenic and how they are treated, spoken to, and addressed specifically in my district. And I have one of the poorest, not all, but some of the poor neighborhoods where there is no consistency there. And I have seen it year over year. This is not a random question. It's because I see it and I drive my district and I notice the same people. And I know that Councilwoman Armstrong more than likely sees the same exact people. But I for some reason, I don't know if there's bias, but I feel that any person of color who is facing some kind of mental health crisis on the street is absolutely ignored unless they are posing a danger to somebody. Meaning that a call is made if somebody's like, oh, it looked like they're wielding a knife. But that typically is not what is happening. They're just walking. You can tell they are not in their right mind. Like, this doesn't require, and if they're wraparound services should be a part of that conversation, right? So if they've been touched once, there should have been some kind of medication, right? I know that they don't necessarily, that we have a gap in how much medication is dispensed and how long they can stay on medication. However, if I'm seeing the same exact person multiple times, walking with their pants halfway down by schools, and it's the same person, and nobody's picked them up, and I know that people have called, then to me, that's a different issue. And I want to know, right, like on the back end, what is truly, truly happening, right? Because I'm one of those legislators that actually cares about what's going on in the streets of my district. I am not disconnected from it. And I want to know, how do I assist and help to engage so that this person can either continue their medication, or we're having a conversation and we understand, like, wait, we might have to do some additional triaging here. But if we're not even, if I'm like, well, when are you contacting this person? When are you engaging them?
Well, Josh Martinez again, for the record, through the chair to Senator Neal. I invite you to come ride with our Office of Community Engagement outreach team. Be happy to have you come and sit down with us. I'd be happy for you to point out that individual. I will go out there personally with my partner and we'll make contact with this individual, but I'd also like to give you a more in-depth offline education on what we do that way, because I like this ability to give the presentation, but I'd also like to invite all of you, if you're interested, please reach out and we'll continue the discussion offline, and we'll give you a tour of what we've done over the years to expand what we've done in regards to the unhoused.
And I appreciate that. Members, maybe we can offline speak with Metro on potentially scheduling it to where we all go collectively. I think that'd be really good if we go as a team. I know we've had an opportunity in the past working with the city and county to sit down, and we've done some good stuff there where they kind of took us around and showed us all the different wraparound services. But I don't think at the time we did that, we had an opportunity to see it through the lens of Metro, where you're usually that initial point of contact outside of the vicinity of those wraparound services that are all huddled in the city of Las Vegas. So I think there's an opportunity maybe for us to have that conversation. Next, we have Vice Chair Considine, please.
Thank you, Chair. I kind of wanted to go back. Sorry, when you were mentioned the entity in Houston that had 28,000, did you say were housed? Sorry.
Adrian Hunt for the record.
Yes.
Through Chair Flores to Assemblywoman Considine. That was the way home. Yes, they had 28,000 plus that were placed in a permanent housing in between 2014 and to the present day. So what they're doing out there has been very effective.
And just that was my question. How out of how many? I guess I was wondering if there was any percentage. Just because I have been on the ride-alongs, I have been in this situation where Metro has spoken to somebody and they are, as you say, service resistant. And I know a lot of the things that are coming online to help folks who are getting out of homelessness because they do just need a job. They need a hand up. But I don't know what percentage of what the 7,900 are make up that and how many of them are in some level service resistant. So I was wondering if Houston was doing that so good, if we could get some more information on what that 28,000 percentage is over all of the homeless.
Adrian Hunt for the record. So remember, I will definitely get those numbers to you. I will look that up and follow up and get that to you.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Can I ask a second?
Please follow it.
So second question, I know you mentioned about the abandoned vehicles, but unless I missed it, what about the motorhomes that aren't abandoned and they are in one block and then move to another block and then come back? I'm on the east side, I'm on Boulder Highway, and we see them often and just moving. I don't know what can be done otherwise.
So I would get that to you as well. So remember in more detail, because I pretty much got the conglomerate of everything as far as under junk vehicles and abandoned vehicles, but I would get those specific numbers to you as well.
Yeah, we're trying to keep it 6 minutes. We all know everybody's on a tight schedule, so.
No, thank you for that. And I think the questions, you all anticipated them, and we're going to go down these different rabbit holes for sure, but I do appreciate it. Next, we have Assemblymember Flanagan.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you for the presentation. I want to say to Officer Hunt, thank you for being available over the summer to answer some of the questions that I've had. So I appreciate your availability. You talked about the work you do in collaborating with the cities and the county as well. And maybe I missed it, can you talk a little bit about how that works in terms of how North Las Vegas Police and how you work with the different jurisdictions, and how does that play with organizations as well, like the VA, because I know oftentimes we have a lot of that population that are veterans and they are distressed and they have their own staff of social workers that are assigned to troubled individuals. And so how does that work?
Adrian Hunt for the record, through Chair Flores to Assemblymember.
My apologies for interrupting you. Feel free to go direct.
Okay.
Yeah, and this is for all presenters. Please do go direct. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, we wanted to present a brief overview as we were requested to, but I do have the additional key partners, which is the City of Las Vegas, Clark County and state agencies, Clark County Social Services, Behavioral Health Organizations, Department of Motor Vehicles, Division of Welfare and Supportive Services, Managed Care Organizations, which is the Silver Summit Health Plan of Nevada, Molina Healthcare, Anthem Blue Cross, and Care Source in Clark County Libraries, local shelters and house providers, Medicare providers, Nevada Homeless Alliance, University of Nevada, Las Vegas, Veterans Administration, Clark County School District, Title I programs, Workforce Connections, Foundation of Independent Fit, Tomorrow, and local businesses and Help of Southern Nevada. So it is a conglomerate of a lot of organizations and partnerships that we do have. Again, I get the information from our Office of Community Engagement. I technically don't work in there, but they gave me just a broad overview that I can present to you. But I can get back with you as well with detailed information on that. Absolutely.
And members, any additional questions in Las Vegas? Seeing none, any questions, Carson City and or Senator Krasner? Seeing none, thank you both again for the presentation. And Mr. Hunt, unlike Senator Neal, I do blame you for absolutely everything, just so you know.
I'll let that ride. But me and Senator Neal go back to a good friend. So we have conversations offline that get real heated and discuss, and so I know her passion. I love it. I'm not mad at you. I love you, Senator.
No, appreciate you both. Thank you. And I do look forward to hopefully being able to coordinate maybe a time where the committee can meet up with you all and see all the work you're doing. Thank you. Good afternoon. Welcome. Whenever you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair Flores and members of the Interim Government Affairs Committee. I'm Joanna Jacob on behalf of Clark County. I'm here with our county manager, Kevin Schiller. I'm going to actually, we have a slide deck, which I'm going to try and pull up, but we might throw the slide deck out the window in response to the issues that have been brought up today. So I'm going to have Kevin start talking. I'm going to see what I can do. Really, the slides, we're not going to read them. We just are offering them to you as a resource, and we don't have to go through them one by one. A few things we did want to talk to you about today are just on our current initiative. So I'll let Kevin start, and I'm going to try and deal with this. So thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Kevin Schiller, Clark County Manager. I do want to say at the intro, the nature of this agenda, actually just sitting in the audience listening to the topics, I want to echo the fact that whether we're talking about federal funds and all the pieces that are happening in terms of coordination, it's the same struggle we're dealing with. You'll hear I don't want to be a pessimist, so I'll try to be positive, but the issue of what we're facing from a federal perspective and the constraints over kind of arch everything we're talking about. And I kind of wanted to highlight a few of those things to Senator Neal's questions earlier and the coordination, and she knows because she's called me many times. I want to try to hit on some of those things in terms of the levels of care and how the county has tried to respond to that in coordination with law enforcement. As far as our slides, we gave some initial stats, talk about the fact that, this year we served about 13,000 individuals. But what I really want to get into is if I go to the third slide, Joanna, you guys have seen this before. Did it come up? Okay.
Oh, there it is. Okay.
If you go to slide 3, you guys have seen this from me before. This is kind of the stair step I use to kind of simplify. It talks about the housing stair step, but I really want to talk about it in a continuum of care stair step. The issue of where people come into the system, kind of to Senator Neal's point earlier, it's not at the bottom and then you go to the top. In some instances, it's the bottom, and the example you just gave, I would put that at the bottom. In other instances, there's people that have some degree of ability to gain independence quicker. They may have less mental health, substance abuse. They may need permanent supportive housing. But all of our program and how we've overarched that with this stair step is really trying to look at how we intervene with people and meet them where they are. Talking a little bit about the mental health, or let's just talk about the possible schizophrenic that we intervene with on the street. Metro interfaces with that individual. You guys all know there's legal bounds by which they operate in terms of where does that client go. That client could be going to UMC, and then you go down this legal 2000 road, and I could talk about that for a while in terms of how we intervene from a state system to do that. But the other side of that conversation, which I think is larger, is that initial assessment. You've heard about CRT. We recently opened crisis stabilization in the last year. The whole point of that is an entry point into the system so that they can receive that initial assessment and then receive those wrap services. Those resistive individuals, and I've talked about this before, when you look at our 9 congregate care sites, those non-congregate care sites are 4 walls with a bed. Those servants of resistant individuals, we try to hit them more than one time. If Metro is seeing that individual more than one time, we found with non-congregate or our navigation center, if we can get them into the 4 walls with the bed, we see that they do tend to be less service resistant. They tend to engage better in those services. And then kind of I wish I had a visual, but if you had a door and you were looking at that door and the door opened up, you would see tentacles of services beyond that door. That is the point of navigation. and how we screen. But at the same time, there's so many individuals, some of those individuals are going into our navigation center, but some of them may go directly into non-congregate care. Senator Neal, you've called me previously and said, I have client A, we react to that client, we will deal with the assessment at the same time that we're placing them into housing because they may not necessarily be service resistant. And then if you go down that continuum, you may have a family and the only need they have is homelessness. We're not dealing with the mental health in that piece. We want to get them into that housing so that we can move that forward. The theme today on kind of regional collaboration, and I kind of quantify that when you're going to hear from nonprofits and you've heard from Miles and all people that I work with, the reality of that is that's the conglomerate of how we react consistently. I think in my world over the past 7.5, 8 years, when I started at the county, I think we might have had an agenda item once every couple months on human services. It's every agenda. That is because it's become that priority. But I also think the jigsaw puzzle of how we connect the dots, and I think that's what kind of Senator Neal, I kind of threw the presentation out, was the issue of what's reality? How does somebody come into this system, and who do I call? How do I call? What do I do? The reality is they come in at different points, but I do want to say I feel like from a nonprofit jurisdictional world, so a municipality and us as the regional entity, that communication is happening. You have a COC, which is federal funding. That piece brings all of those groups together. I kind of call that like necessity foundational funding. And, you know, thanks to this legislative body and others, our commission and our federal delegation, you had this infusion of ARPA and CARES. What that allowed us to do was create some flexible options. When I talk about non-congregate care, when I talk about crisis stabilization, when we created those programs, one of the things I was insistent on is that we did not create programs that we would have to close, looking at it from the context of one-time money. So, you know, when we talk about AB 309 and the enabling language that the legislature gave us, that allowed us to sustain services and continue to sustain services. And even in light of the conversation today with the federal funding mix, we have a complete dashboard of executive orders. And as you know, you have an executive order, then you have agency direction in the context of how we comply. Some have agency direction, some don't have agency direction, some change in 30 days. You guys have seen the headlines on those things. We're constantly monitoring that. But what I also want to say is in the context of that collaboration and where our resourcing is, whether I'm talking about non-congregate care, crisis stabilization, those pieces, we've really tried to dial in the use of non-federal funding to create that sustainability so that we don't lose that capacity depending on what the federal temperature is and what happens. The other piece that I think is really important in the transitional component, whether they're coming into the courtyard or whether they're coming in via Metro through a non-congregate care, that care management and that system tentacle that I just talked about, the front door, I can speak to it, has improved. There is connection into that point, and we're consistently working together to figure out how to continue to do that. Families at the courtyard, you know, we don't want a family at the courtyard. The courtyard works directly. We have a protocol and intervention team to get families out of the courtyard into one of those levels in that stair step. Another piece in the special session, you had the crime bill, you had the issue of the corridor specialty court, and those pieces tied to homelessness. The reality of it is most of the resources to address that corridor court, however the court determines that it wants to create it, it's a question of if they're ordered out, where are they ordered out to with that level of accountability. Most of those puzzle pieces fit within this collaborative system that we're trying to evolve. I think for this interim committee, which, you know, this, as most of you know, I don't know if you know, but this is my passion. Like, these are the pieces that I enjoy trying to figure out how to maneuver and create consistent improvement in this system. And I think to again, to Senator Neal's point, because I know she'll be asking me questions, so I might as well answer them before I get there. But a couple of the pieces that I think are really important are, as we maneuver in that system, and I use that example of take a schizophrenic on the high end of that scale, take a family on the low end of the scale that's only experiencing homelessness, and then take everything in between. Where we're trying to curtail that is through an assessment to say, where do they fit into this resource continuum from us as the regional provider so that we can get them to independence? If they don't get to independence, then the secondary level is, are they in long-term nursing care? Do they need assisted living? We have embedded programs through Nevada Senior Services that sit within UMC, specifically dealing with dementia, because if you can't get that client out of the hospital, the cost goes through the roof and there's no good care. So they're embedded to find family members and support that. Another piece that I just want to emphasize on the federal side, which I think is important, is we're consistently trying to look at that roadmap and determine, much like the discussion I heard earlier, of how do we make our programs malleable to what federally is changing, so that we continue to provide those services. So I can only speak from at a regional level, and I think you're going to hear from the nonprofits also and the other jurisdictions. I do feel like at this level, we're really communicating to try to do that and also address those levels of care. Senator Neal, we just had a board meeting maybe a month ago, and one of the discussion points that we had was tied to, I think it was Commissioner Kirkpatrick who asked the question, which was like, Kevin, can you do the stair step with a resource document? Who do I call? Who do I call when I get this? Who do I call when I get this? Who do I call when I get this? And I think that's really where we're trying to head when you get into that context versus a referral and a process. So at the county side, the other piece I'll just touch on lightly because I think it's relevant is aging out foster youth, the juvenile services population. You guys have heard discussion on T-POP and the harbors. About 7 or 8 years ago when I got to the county, I really wanted to set up a clinical services kind of intervention model, much like the state has state mental health. Because it touches all of our associated departments. We're in that process now, but what I'm really excited about is it's going to oversee that programming, which allows not only just they don't come in and get a referral, they come in and get direct service. And that is really what this is about, is how do we address that direct service at the point of contact at whatever level. We need to meet the client where the client is. The service resistant is difficult, but I think we have a pretty good relationship as we work forward with Metro, law enforcement, and our jurisdictions to figure out how do we get them there and how many times do we have to tap on them? How do we get there? So Joanne, I don't know if you want to add anything. I completely went off script. So.
We went off script, and I'm going to throw the slides out the window. I did put one up just on the regional collaborations because as Kevin was talking about it, and you're going to hear about it from the other speakers, I think we should probably get to questions here. The only thing I would add, and that I wanted to add, is because I know the members of the public are watching, and for that reason, just this week, we actually had announced that with the funding that came last session through the Ways and Means Bill, AB 475, we actually have expanded eviction diversion programming to North Las Vegas and Henderson courts. So that is very exciting, and wanted to say thank you for supporting that bill last session and with the appropriation that came to Clark County, because it's a partnership with the courts and with legal aid where we're doing eviction diversion, which is a prevention service on the stair step. And then the other thing I know that we wanted to add, I guess Kevin touched on how this population touches so many of our county departments. It's really a struggle to condense it into 6 minutes. So Senator Flores, I really appreciate you mentioning the tours that we've done, because we like to show what we're doing. And so if we want to do this, I was just talking to the city of Las Vegas. We can kind of show you how it works on the ground, because the city will come up and say that we are working. I know on the slide that we put up, we did partner with them also with assistance from the legislature on rental assistance funding. So helping families that are in the courtyard and linking them into our county family housing that we have. And that is still ongoing today, also from the courtyard and their recuperative care center. So we talk at the staff level all the time, and we're working with Metro and the city, and we could probably do that tour together. And I know the other nonprofits will talk about the point in time count. And then do you want to talk about the last slide, Kevin, on what's coming next?
I kind of touched on it already, but I just wanted to add one thing. I think with all the discussion we're having, I think one of the key pieces is whether from a nonprofit world all the way through the government world, we have to try to find a way to be as efficient as possible and make the dollar go as far as possible. And I think that's what the collaboration is about. I think that's what we really are trying to focus on. And honestly, the challenge in that, as you guys know, is whether it's how the money's coming, what you're applying for, how you're applying for it. Are you applying by the time you get the award to the next level? I think at the county level and also at the jurisdictional level, we're all trying to figure out how to utilize that as efficiently as possible. Couple pieces that haven't been talked about is with HR 1, hospital funding is going to be dramatically impacted. So for us at the county UMC, there's a significant challenge there that we're facing. And then obviously with HR 1, the other part of that continuum that we're going to struggle with is the uninsured. If you go pre-Affordable Care Act, you had an indigent system that existed in the state. You had the Affordable Care Act, which really changed that game. And now we're kind of falling into a non-Affordable Care Act world where we don't have a system to fall back in. So the county tends to be that back. So we're also identifying that challenge because as that population rises, they sit somewhere in this continuum, and we have to figure out how to meet their needs.
We can stand for questions, Chair Flores. Obviously, if there's questions on any of the points in the slide, I'm happy to follow up with the committee members. And then on the towing on the towing issue that you asked us to also address, I'll just point out that if there are specific issues in your districts, I have offered, and I hope that you'll take us up on this. It is actually a complicated issue, Senator Flores, as you noted, because there's multiple departments in the county who are involved in this. It could be code enforcement. It could be our Public Works Road Division. It could be our constables out in the rural areas. Really have to refer to Metro because they cannot go out and address all of those cases. And so I've been really wanting to just maybe get some information out about how to report those issues into the county, because we have a system that really talks to the cities, the Metro, and all of our departments without sending people to multiple departments. That's really in place that we can take complaints that way, and happy to do that work. Obviously, we agreed. The constables that I reached out to looked at Metro's numbers and said this is kind of new for them too, but that they are mostly working with Metro. So we let them address and have the statistics. I will also say on the code, so Assemblywoman Considine, on the issue that you brought up about cars that are moving, the bill we did last session had a definition of junk, which was it's not roadworthy, and it's also usually we can't identify, but it's not registered, so we don't know who to contact. If it's not in that definition, it may be addressed by code enforcement, and in which case we can work with you on that. They usually do that through code enforcement officers and through the abatement process, because we have, I've talked about this a little bit, we have an abatement budget so that they can go out, and it's a little bit longer notice period, but they will go out and tag, and then we can address it that way. So it's multifaceted. That's why I'm happy to work with. If there are issues in your district, would definitely follow up, and we can, as the bill was effective on October 1st, it's still relatively new, and we're going to track it and see it, because it is a big issue. We know in multiple across the valley, multiple commission districts, which is why we came and asked for. We're going to try and hack away at it. So that's all I have to say, and we'll stand for questions. Thank you.
And we're happy to talk offline on any of these topics.
Thank you. Members, any questions? Senator Neal, please.
Thanks, Chair. So my first question is, you mentioned foster youth. What are you guys doing in order to coordinate, because they are part of the ABOD group that is going to be impacted on March 1st with the SNAP benefit and the 20-hour, either the 20-hour requirement to work or training. And the way I read it was that their time in foster care doesn't count. So are you trying to coordinate so that, number one, right, we're not going to run into any issues where, they end up being homeless or displaced, because there needs to be a multi-tiered strategy, particularly around that group, because they've always been a part of the workforce strategy for almost 20 years, meaning hard to place into employment. So are you guys engaging in that front?
Senator Neal, Joanna Jacob for the record, and thank you for the question. I think we are, the aged out foster youth right now, we have been working on implementation of the new program and the extended foster care that passed as part of the Step Up program that we had in place before that bill passed for many years. The youth that are enrolled in that program, most of the kids who age out in our system do enroll in that program because they get a stipend from Clark County, a living stipend that is akin to what we pay foster parents. That is the monthly stipend. And then usually you can stay in that program as long as you are enrolled in school or you are working. So I think it is something definitely, yes, we are going to have to work on that. And I don't have the answer for you today on exactly how, but we are going to have to work on it. There are structures in place, though, that I think that we can look and modify. And yes, the goal is we don't want our kids to end up homeless. This is the whole point that we're trying to do. And is there a lot of work to do? Yes, of course there is. And so I'm making a note on that, and I would like to follow up with our social service department. This population, just for, if you want to know who to call, like in Clark County, when you're in foster care, you're served by family services. Then when you turn 18 and you fall into this category, you switch over to our Clark County social services. They work together. There's no like silos there. So I will reach out to our director of social services and see what we can put together for you on what may be in the works as we get ready to adapt to that.
Thank you.
And I would just echo, for the record, Kevin Schiller, I would just echo those kids as they age out, they have a CAP attorney, and then they also have a dedicated case manager. So I can just tell you, like, we are not going to let those kids go homeless or not have benefits. I mean, that is a vulnerable population that we put a lot of energy into to ensuring that we can make sure they have self-sufficiency. So we can do follow-up after also, though.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I'm just trying to make sure that people are not reactive on March 1st, and then all of a sudden you're rolling down a strategy. So the second question is on the supportive housing fund. So Assemblywoman Monroe Moreno in 2023 did AB 310, which was that initial tranche of $32 million for supportive housing. I don't know if the county applied, and then there was a second tranche in 2025 under, I believe it ended up being nestled in 540, where she did an additional $21 million and then created a permanent fund, or it was done in AB 364, I think. But I'm just wondering, how is that fitting in your stair step, right? Did you apply for any of these funds for the supportive housing?
Senator Neal, Joanna Jacob for the record. I try to anticipate all of your questions, and I don't, sometimes I do a good job, sometimes I don't. I did just talk with our community housing office. I think many of you know Dagny Stapleton, who is heading up our community housing administrator. We just met with the Housing Coalition to try and figure out what was happening with this funding. We actually funded our permanent support. The stair step fits in because we look at it, it's both at the top, but it's also prevention on homelessness too. So it's like that's why we like to talk about arrows. It's not necessarily shouldn't be read as linear, but we funded permanent supportive housing through Dagny, the funds Welcome Home Clark County, but also through the COC funding. Now, when there was an announcement earlier, I can't remember how long ago it was because it's been moving so fast, but there was an announcement about the change that was coming from the federal level about how restrictions that might come on the use of federal funding for permanent supportive housing. There was a discussion today about how are we going to pivot and do that. We were funding it through federal funding, and so we that's really what we were trying to do, because we've been funding a lot of other housing programs through county funds. And then the conversation shifted that if we had to be reactive to that announcement at the federal level, that we would have to look to see if we could free up county funds on that point. I don't know if the county applied for that funding. I'm going to have to follow up. I don't want to misspeak. I just talked to our community housing office about this, and we were trying to figure out what the current status is of that program. So I would like to, if you would bear with me, I would like to write that down on my list for Senator Neal, and I'm going to go through the list and follow up on that.
That's fine. I just wanted to know if you applied for it, how it was working. You wouldn't have got all of it, but you would have gotten some portion if you applied. So that's just what I wanted to know. You just tell me offline. Thanks, Chair.
And to Ms. Jacobs and Mr. Schiller, and actually really this is everybody in this category of this conversation. It was not our intent to pretend that we could in 6 minutes or 10 minutes resolve all the problems that we have, but we were intentional about putting it first on day one of the interim committee, because I wanted to make sure that we allowed it to serve as a buildup of just working offline with you, getting everybody to start collaborating. And so the intent, members, and this is not an ask that you don't ask questions now. Please, anything you'd like to get on the record, do. But the intent will be that we start the conversation here. We hear from everybody individually, what's happening, where are they collaborating, where we think we can do a better job, et cetera, and then that we use this time to build on doing some work offline with them. And that collectively all of us, or some of us, can take the lead on that, but that's the intent for today. Members, any additional questions? Do we have any questions from Carson City or Senator Krasner on Zoom? And Senator, I can't see you on my end, so if you have any questions, feel free to just unmute yourself. Okay, perfect. And with that, I do want to say thank you to you both. And again, it is our intent to hopefully send out an invite, have all of us collectively sit down. Senator Neal had been doing some work in the past, very much around that, and trying to get some of our local jurisdictions, nonprofits, kind of stakeholders in general, and having everybody in the same room. So we're hoping to kind of reignite that and continue that work from before. Thank you again. And with that, next I'd like to invite Ms. Arcelia Barajas up. And I know that the city of Las Vegas has nothing to do with this issue, right? You don't spearhead a lot of these efforts, and I'm sure every jurisdiction is incredibly helpful to you always. Please.
Thank you. That was our presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Randy Robinson, Director of Government Affairs for the City of Las Vegas. Thank you for this opportunity to come and share just a few minutes worth of discussion about the work that we're doing in our jurisdiction on this issue. Appreciate the presenters that came before us. This work is tough, it's complex, it's continual, and it's incredibly crucial, particularly to the folks that we're trying to serve. And so the collaboration that continues to grow and evolve is vital to us making progress here. So luckily for you, you don't have to listen to me anymore. I've brought our expert, Arcelia Barajas, our Director of Neighborhood Services. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to her. She can introduce herself and get started. I'm going to try to pull up our presentation here on the computer so that we can get this thing rolling. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Randy. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. My name, as he mentioned, is Arcelia Barajas. I'm the Director of Neighborhood Services. And I would like to share just a little bit about some of the things that we're doing in collaboration with all of our regional partners. But I really would like to emphasize and kind of ditto what our jurisdictional partners, Joanna and Kevin, were mentioning, is that the cities and the local jurisdictions over the last 5 to 7 years have really made active efforts to straighten our partnerships and collaborations as we address this important work. network. Some of the things that you will know of or may know of where we have really strengthened our work together was during COVID, during the ISOQ. That was a joint collaborative effort where we set up a COVID shelter for homeless folks. We also worked really closely together during the distribution of the coronavirus funds. We partnered to ensure that we were collaborating to not duplicate funding and resources and efforts, and really were able to get out a large amount of funding in a very quick time frame. And then some other regional collaborations that we've really emphasized have been great for us and for our community is the recent development or groundbreaking for Sunrise Ranch development. And that is a regional collaboration. We have county or Henderson land for that. The cities and the county all put in some of our federal dollars. The Housing Authority gave us housing vouchers for that development. And I believe the Department of Family Services will be able to place some of their foster youth that are aging out of care. And so those are just some examples where we have been really working to ensure that we are leveraging our resources to help some of our most vulnerable residents here in our region. And so I know one of the questions you guys mentioned, so I wanted to address it a little bit more, was on our collaborations around outreach and engagement. So we do have outreach teams at North Las Vegas. Henderson has a clinical outreach team. We have the more outreach teams. Help of Southern Nevada has an outreach team that's funded, I believe, by the county. And just in the last year, all of these outreach teams have been meeting and doing what we call joint outreach efforts. And so the different jurisdictions will identify large encampments or areas of great need for that collaborative outreach support. And they've been doing that monthly. And so that's been a great opportunity to address areas where we have jurisdictional boundaries up against each other, where we do know that, if the more teams go out on the city side, folks might just head right over to North Las Vegas. And so we try to work together to really address the outreach on both sides. So we will go into North Las Vegas. We've done it in the county and in other locations. And so that's been a real great opportunity to partner to address some of those issues that happen when we're working just within our boundaries. Some other things that Kevin mentioned. We all are part of the Continuum of Care, which is our federal or regional body that administers the federal funding from the COC. The city holds a chair spot. We are a board member spot. The county is our collaborative applicant. All of the other jurisdictions sit on the board. The current board, we're working to develop a strategic plan to address homelessness regionally. So that's been a great opportunity for all of us to have input and discuss what resources we have available so that we can really maximize all of these funds to do some great work. And as they were mentioning at our courtyard, we do, the courtyard is within the city. It is on Foremaster where we have the highest concentration of homelessness. However, we work with a lot of community partners, nonprofits, other jurisdictions. As Kevin mentioned, we have a standing biweekly call with the Clark County Social Services, Department of Family Services to discuss interventions for the families that do arrive at the courtyard. It is a low barrier shelter, which means anybody come in. We don't background check, we don't drug test, and so it is not the safest place always for families. We do our best, and fortunately, we've never had any issues, but we try as quickly as we can to get the families out into a placement that's more suitable for them. So we coordinate with the county to address that every other week. And we also work with them on their non-congregate shelter. We send referrals, we reach out, so we have great relationships. Our courtyard operator is Nevada Behavioral Health, who also happens to be operating and working out of the Clark County Crisis Stabilization Center. So we have a lot of coordination and collaboration amongst those two facilities. And so with that, I'm going to kind of go over a little bit of our, is that up? Okay, sorry. So we also have a continuum, as you can see. It very similar to exactly what Kevin was mentioning. Ours just is a circle, but really it does talk about the different aspects of the system of care for our homeless folks, ranging from street outreach to navigation services, transitional, bridge housing, crisis, all the way to permanent housing, permanent rental, permanent home ownership, which we are also all working together on right now and really excited to bring out some new programs in the next year for that. And so with that, I'll just head right into talk about some of our programs and how we partner with our community partners on that. So the courtyard, just briefly, we did see about 14,000 unduplicated folks last year at the courtyard, and for reference, we have everything from access to showers, restrooms, laundry services. We have the State Department of Welfare on site. Nevada Behavioral Health provides group therapy, referrals to their support center. We also partner with Metro, as you heard earlier. The Giving Project is out of the courtyard. It happens every month, and they bring a lot of their community partners and resources to provide services. We have a lot of tabling events from our nonprofit partners that are weekly. So we have a weekly calendar that goes out. So we bring folks that will cut people's hair, help them with resumes, help them with clothing. So the courtyard, the navigation center really is what we would like to have or call a one-stop shop of resource access for our homeless folks. And even folks that are not homeless, we offer prevention services out of there too. So if you are in need of rental assistance, folks can come to the courtyard and meet with the case manager and get some of that assistance as well. We sleep overnight, although the courtyard's not a shelter. We do have folks that feel more comfortable sleeping in the courtyard than off of Four-Master, where they are a target often if they have medication and things that are of value to them. And so we have been running right around 500 people that sleep there a night. Every day we see about 800 folks come through the courtyard for some type of resource or service. So some of our other current programs is we do have a second chance employment program. We partner with Foundation for Independent Tomorrow. We have a grant from the Department of Justice for a little over $1 million. And so the goal for this program is really to help those homeless folks that come through our justice system. So this program supports justice involved folks with receiving job training, being connected to employers that offer second chances, as well as housing providers that offer second chances. We also have a ticket to home program. We have a small budget for this program, but it is definitely a needed resource in our community. We're able to connect folks to their family members in other cities when appropriate. We have a process for that, but it does happen where folks end up here thinking they might make it big. They came out here with a boyfriend, a girlfriend, and things didn't work out, and they don't have any resources. And as you know, one of the things that really helps our folks get back into self-sufficiency is having that support system and that network to help them. And so we want to make sure that if there's that opportunity, we can help those folks connect with family. We also have the MORE teams. As I mentioned, they work closely with all of our other outreach teams, but they do work within the City of Las Vegas jurisdiction through our hotline. We do have the hotline. They also partner with our CRT team, which was mentioned earlier. So if someone calls the 911, we at our fire station or our fire call center now have licensed clinical social workers who can take a call and determine whether it needs to be a fire or an ambulance, or maybe it might be the CRT team that can come out in partnership with our MORE teams to provide some resources and assistance and determine the next step for someone. We also have some housing services. So we partner with Catholic Charities. We provide funding to them through some of our federal dollars to get folks from the courtyard who may be interested and ready for transitional housing. We have, we partner with Siegel Suites. We have a lot of landlords throughout the city that we partner with to get folks housed through transitional or bridge housing, and then hopefully get into something permanent after they go through their case management plan and are ready for self-sufficiency. Our recuperative care center, some of you have toured. If you haven't, we'd love to have you. It opened right around COVID, and it was initially a response, but we found that there was a huge need, and we partner with all of the hospitals. We have a full referral process from all of the regional hospitals to send folks that are homeless that need to be discharged, and they don't want to discharge them to the street. So if you have a wound, if you just had a surgery, if you just had, open C-section or, appendix removed, oftentimes we get to go home and rest in bed for a couple more days or weeks to get better, and they don't have anywhere to go. So the recuperative care center will help nurse them back to health and then hopefully get them into some housing after that. We have a SOAR practitioner at the recuperative care center, so we're able to get folks while they're being seen and treated. We can get them connected to resources, to any of their disability, retirement, things like that. And we have a very high success rate for housing folks out of the recuperative center because we're able to have them there for that period of time to get them connected. And we do house them through funding that we received from the county for the homeless prevention. And we use those resources to get those folks into something more permanent. We also have, rental development, which I mentioned one of the examples. We work closely with our regional partners. I meet monthly with my counterpart at the county, North Las Vegas. We try to make sure that we are looking at all the projects holistically to determine how much funding they need, how can we support them, so that we can make sure a lot of these affordable housing projects are able to come to fruition here in our region. Housing preservation programs, we do have a full-blown division that provides a lot of assistance to homeowners who are low income or are in some of our more underserved areas. One of our priorities is always to keep folks housed. We don't want to add to the homeless continuum in that way, and just make sure that they're able to live in safe and suitable housing. So we have rehab programs. We have a lead-based paint program that we received funding for. We applied through the Department of Health and Human Services. We also have funding that we receive from the Water District. So we have various pots of money that we use to provide assistance to homeowners who are struggling to, keep their home up to code, or they may be seniors who don't have the ability, resources, or capacity to maybe, cut their grass, and so they're receiving citations. So there's a variety of different reasons why this program gets involved, but we like to leverage all of these different funding sources to really help folks, bring their homes up to code and standard and be able to live and hopefully age in place. That's it on that. So some of our programming on the horizon. Am I out of time? So we have the recuperative care center, which is the one I just mentioned. We did receive $10 million of state ARPA money that helps us with the construction of that. That's set to open in July. We are also working with the Nevada Housing Authority to help us move the previously approved bill. Is that to help us get some Medicaid money to help cover the cost for that. So we're really excited. That's going to be 75 beds for recuperative care here in our region. We're working on some behavioral mental health services that are going to run out of the courtyard as well. We'll be partnering with some federally qualified health centers. We partner right now with Nevada Health Centers and Hope Christian, but we hope to bring more on board for that. And then we have some other transitional housing programs that are in the works as well. So that's a lot. And that's all I have, so I'm happy to answer any questions.
Randy Robinson again. Thank you, Chair Flores. Well, RC takes a breath. We'll just conclude here. Again, appreciate your comments. This is kind of the beginning of the conversation, not the end of the conversation. We look forward to working with the committee and our other partners in the region to continue to make progress on this issue. And so happy to answer any questions you have now or just offline or whatever you need. Thank you.
We do have a question for you from our Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I just had a question on the housing services, your partnerships with your local landlords. Siegel Suites, Catholic Charities might be a little bit different. But when you are contracting with them, are those market rates that you're paying, or do you have contractual amounts that are lower? And how long are those contracts for?
So lower, generally lower. With Siegel Suites, we do negotiate with all of our landlords, and so we do have lower than market rates, or we use fair market rates depending on the type of unit. It could be a single room occupancy, it could be 1 or 2 bedrooms. So we don't pay anything more than fair market based on HUD standards, but oftentimes we negotiate lower rates because we're able to master lease a large amount of units.
Members, any additional questions? Senator Neal? Yeah, we'll jump into it. Well, that's fine. Yeah, I guess that's fine. Senator Neal knows all the questions ahead of time. No, the only, we were discussing here as a group, I know that there had been some issues back during the pandemic in 2020. It might have been an isolated incident, but I know that there were concerns that were raised, particularly with the relationship with Siegel Suites. And again, it may have been a situation that was taken care of already, but more importantly, we were just curious on the vetting of these partnerships and, just making sure that we're working with the folk that we need to be working with.
Yeah, I think so. Finding landlords that want to work with our population is not easy. So we have, our team goes out there and really scouting landlords. I think all of the jurisdictional partners were kind of in that same space where if we find someone that's willing to work with us to house our folks, we try to build relationships. We try to make sure that we maintain those by paying on time, making sure that we're responsible for example, if there's damage to the units and things like that. So we do our best to vet the landlords that we work with. We do master leases, so we will, lease the units for a year, for example, for a contract. And so we have program contracts and agreements that we have with the actual participants to go into those units. That helps us ensure that we keep, we're able to keep the continuity in the unit if someone's not in there. But we do try our best to vet the landlords that we work with.
And if issues arise or concerns are brought forth, what's that process look like? Just once an individual is placed in a particular location and they were to raise any concerns, is there a process for that and what that looks like?
Yeah, so we have really good relationship with the landlords, the property managers, but we also have case managers on staff in our department. So we have case managers that are assigned to the folks that are in these units. And so they work with them. They will go out and do visits. They help them get to their appointments. So they're interacting with them often. So if there are any issues or concerns, they will make sure that we address that. And we have had, landlords and places where it might not be the best suitable place for recovery, for example. And so, we have had leases or master leases that we have not renewed after the year because they just didn't work for us or any of our participants. But we do have case managers that are there and working with the folks consistently.
Understood. Thank you. Senator Neal, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I just wanted to know, do you guys partner at all with Volunteers in Medicine? Do you have a relationship with them? They are a nonprofit and they pretty much take all persons. They're in Vegas, in the Las Vegas. They're actually in Ward 5. I want to know, does the city engage them at all, try to, offer any kind of RDA assistance to that organization so that they can continue to serve those populations that they're pretty much serving for free? And it's probably one of the only groups I know that is also doing dental care and prenatal within one space.
So, Senator Arcelia Barajas, for the record, I think I've been saying that. We actually don't partner with Volunteers in Medicine currently. Absolutely, we can explore that. What we do, we have Nevada Health Centers that operates our federally qualified health center off of Main and Fourmaster. And so the folks that we work with go to that facility. We have a negotiated agreement with them so that the cost for them is very low. And so we're able to kind of partner with them. And we also have Hope Christian, who's another FQHC that we work with for our referral systems.
Well, it might be something that you want to consider only because they are serving in one of the poorest zip codes, 89106. And because of this current administration, they were being impacted in terms of funding because they take Medicaid. And so, you know, it's when we talk about sustainable communities, when we talk about, you know, there was a conversation around, you know, health corridors and trying to make these kind of seamless patterns within the cities. I mean, it's one of the groups that is, you know, trying to trudge on their own, and they're squarely within the redevelopment area. And I feel like there should be a conversation, at minimum, a conversation to find out what do they need. Are they eligible for any kind of assistance grants so they can continue to serve the low-income population that's over there?
Yeah, we can absolutely reach out to them.
Okay, thanks.
All right, next we'll go to Assemblymember Flanagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to say thank you to the City of Las Vegas and to Clark County. I know the work in this area is a heavy lift, and we're going to probably always be underfunded to try to address this need. And I know it's not your jurisdiction, but I am curious because you talked about a partnership between the county and the city, and it's nice to know that we're working better together. Where is North Las Vegas or other jurisdictions on addressing this? Because, especially North Las Vegas, just because it just runs right into the city and that whole corridor where Catholic Charities is and Shade Tree, and it is just inundated with homelessness and a need to work to address it and improve that gateway. So are they at the table?
They are. They are also a board seat on the Continuum of Care, our regional body, and they do have their outreach teams that actually North Las Vegas, their homeless, I believe it's the manager. He actually coordinates the coordinated outreach efforts amongst all of our outreach teams. So they are at the table, and they are part of the discussion. They offer, you know, the services that they do have, and they do come to the table.
Please follow up.
So in that space of offering the services that they do have, unlike the county or unlike the city, there's not, are there in this conversation, is there any conversation about plans for facilities or spaces that will be actually a lift on the part of North Las Vegas to contribute to alleviating or helping with the problem?
I'm not aware of any navigation centers per se. I do know they just opened recently their Dolores Huerta Community Center. I don't know if that's the exact name, and they provide resources out of there for the community, but I'm not sure the extent of the homeless services or what the resources are. So I apologize.
That's okay. I appreciate your trying. Thank you. I'll follow up.
Members, any additional questions? Senator Neal, please.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm trying to get clarifying information. So when you said you spoke to the manager, are we talking about the city manager?
No. The manager, his name is Jason Lilly. I believe he's the manager for their homeless services division in North Las Vegas.
And you guys actually, you communicate, but you don't coordinate?
No, they communicate, they coordinate. So he actually works to coordinate the regional outreach interventions, if you will. So he brings in all of the teams, and you know, they plan accordingly where they're going to do some work on a certain day. So they work to kind of provide interventions in some of our larger encampment areas. And I have not been on one of the events, but I do know that Help of Southern Nevada's team is a part of that as well. So Falala might be able to share a little bit more of what that might look like. But they do, you know, all of our outreach teams coordinate in that effort.
Okay, thanks.
And I don't think we have any additional questions for Las Vegas. Any questions, Carson City or Senator Krasner? Seeing none, again, thank you for the conversation, and I am more than certain we will continue to work together offline. What do we have next? Is it Sarah Ramirez? Or am I skipping somebody? Oh, Ms. Riley, with the President and Chief Executive Officer of Help of Southern Nevada. Good afternoon, welcome.
Thank you. Fulala Riley, Help of Southern Nevada. For those that aren't familiar with us, we are a nonprofit 501c3 organization, and we have been around for 5.5 decades. And we focus on preventing and ending homelessness, and we do this one person, one youth, one family at a time. This morning, 842 people woke up in a Help of Southern Nevada program bed. And if you refer back to Kevin and the Clark County stair step, they have 8 steps, and our beds that folks woke up in run the gamut from the first 7 steps. However, under prevention, we enter into the home ownership part. Through our contract with Nevada Housing Division and Weatherization Program, we do assist and prevent our low-income senior citizens that are homeowners. We help them with prevention in providing those weatherization services. The individuals that are in our housing programs range in age from 2 weeks old, that was born into our pregnant and parenting youth program, up to 80 years old. These individuals were formerly homeless, and most of them came through the coordinated entry of our regional COC, Continuum of Care. Besides those program beds, additionally, there are thousands that are served through our non-housing programs, like the aforementioned weatherization, workforce services, holidays, and then our street outreach team. Our collaborative partnerships, thank you for inviting all the folks that came along. We work very closely with Metro, Clark County, the City of Las Vegas, and then the folks that are going to present after me from Vegas Rescue Mission and Catholic Charities, Salvation Army, all in the effort to connect the unhoused population with emergency services, emergency shelter, and hopefully bring them into that stair step of housing availability. Beyond our social services and the government entities and law enforcement, collaborative partnerships categorically include our MCOs, our educational institutions, our mental health providers, medical providers, landlords, property management companies, and in other areas, corporate donors that we actually have to go to ask them to provide support, financial support for programs that are mostly funded by government funding from federal down to our local entities. But those corporate donors have to step in because there's an ever increasing unallowable expenses that come with all the government funding that's available. So things like recently, some funding sources don't allow for staff training. Other funding sources have eliminated other things that were typically and historically allowable expenses. The cost of doing business is rising for everyone, including nonprofit organizations. And so the ability to provide services is being reduced along with funding, but even if funding is remaining, because of the increasing unallowable expenses, it does require nonprofit organizations to go to the private philanthropy to support or complete the support of programs. The way we look at things that Help Us Southern Nevada, our funders are our partners in providing these services. And the service providers that we work with on a regular basis are really there to help us connect everyone, because everyone that is unhoused is not a cookie cutter approach. So some of our clients are not actually a good fit for a congregate shelter. And so we then try to connect them with non-congregate shelter, but there's an availability issue. So we were also asked to, hey, where does collaboration need some improvement? Where some of our collaborations fall short is when our partners that we have historically counted on to provide certain services to our clients as we wrap our arms around them. When those partners have reduced funding, reduced capacity, reduced everything, right? Then they can't actually help our clients because their funding may be limited to the ones that are walking through their doors. Some of our other areas where we would love your support in is one of the largest collaborative efforts for our community happened last Thursday in the point in time count. Leading up to it, we were 150 volunteers short. It would have been great to see support from every elected official, right? Pushing to their constituents that are concerned with homelessness. Would it have like to have you push out to your constituents that are concerned with that to help? If you can volunteer, help us. It is the single most important day of homelessness funding from the federal level. It all hinges on that point in time. Share it on your social media, push it out in your newsletter. We'd love that support. We'd love the collaboration to expand for the OFA. We look forward to tapping into that match funding. We currently have a federal grant that lacks some funding. We may have to give it up if we can't. So we're looking forward to exploring that. I would love to see an expansion. A little more than $1 million would be helpful. So any support you could provide in that area would be much appreciated. I do want to share that just to give you a snapshot. We do have street outreach teams, and our street outreach team operates 7 days a week, 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. We have tons and tons of partnerships. But on Thursdays, because it's the overlap day of our regular weekly team and our weekend team, we actually keep that team in-house. And on average, our unhoused population comes in on every Thursday. There's a little more than 200 people on average. They're unhoused. They're coming to check in on the community queue because they have to check in every 30 days to keep their assessment active. So approximately 200 people every Thursday for that. We typically place about 40 of those individuals into non-congregate shelter, emergency shelter. Much of you'll hear from our partners at Vegas Rescue Mission and the other folks in our non-congregate shelters operated. In some instances, we even will transport to the courtyard if they choose so. We place 40, not because 40 is what's, those are the ones that said, I'm ready for shelter. It's because that's the capacity that we have available to us. And that's just a snapshot, 40 of 200 that willingly come to us and are asking for supports. It's the capacity. We don't have availability in those emergency beds. Your support in those functions would be immensely appreciated. And then just in closing, I'd like to touch on the federal shift, with this, with populations that are served or they'd like to focus on. As we as a state need to focus on, hey, permanent supportive housing might be under attack or on the chopping block. We as a state need to figure out how do we move forward funding for prevention programs, interim solutions, and permanent solutions as in housing. So I know we're going to have to do some shifts because we've received a reprieve for a year for our federal funding in homelessness, according to the most recent release. However, I don't know if that's a done deal for the rest. Like, we might be in the same position we were in December next year. And so as we look to plan for that, and we might have to shift our priorities as a state, I would just like to point out that all three of those areas need to be moved forward, and we may have to shift because their shift from permanent housing and permanent solutions might be different. And with that, I will pause and take any questions.
And thank you for the presentation. Really appreciate you being here. Members, any questions? Seeing none in Las Vegas, we will go to Carson City or Senator Krasner via Zoom. And I don't believe we see any questions. However, the intent is the same. We're hoping that as we have the working groups taking place during the interim, that we have the first line of folk who are doing their work day to day to join us and guide us. Ultimately, we're hoping that we just have the right people in the right room and that the legislators are mostly listening and learning so that we can help in whatever way we can. And sometimes conversations lead to money, but we're hoping that we can also have some policy discussions about that. So again, thank you for joining us today. And with that, we'll go ahead and close out your presentation.
Thank you. Just standing, please know that you can always reach out if you'd like to do a ride along with our street outreach team. I know that some of you have already. Please know that you have a standing invitation to take us up on that offer. Thank you.
Thank you. And on the agenda, we do have the Salvation Army, but I know that unfortunately they had a last minute conflict and weren't able to join us. So next we'll go to the Catholic Charities of Southern Nevada. Welcome.
Good afternoon, Chair Flores and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I'm Sarah Ramirez, President and CEO for Catholic Charities of Southern Nevada. Catholic Charities has been serving this community for more than 85 years. Through 16 programs, we provide housing stability, food security, and family strengthening services to over 4,500 individuals every single day. Today, I want to speak about what collaboration truly looks like on the ground, where public policy, nonprofit operations, corporate partnerships, and community needs intersect. In Southern Nevada, there is no shortage of willingness to collaborate. Public agencies, nonprofits, healthcare systems, and community partners all share a same goal: stability for individuals and responsible use of public resources. Collaboration among the nonprofits in Southern Nevada is strong and ongoing. Where we need support is in aligning public systems so that collaboration is easier, not harder to sustain. Where collaboration becomes challenging is not in the intent, it's in the structure. Funding streams are often siloed, eligibility requirements differ across systems, and documentation and compliance standards don't always align. As a result, nonprofits frequently serve as an operational bridge, absorbing misalignment between systems so that individuals experience continuity rather than confusion. Translating policy into practice, coordinating across agencies, and keeping systems talking to one another is where much of our behind-the-scenes effort lies. As one of the region's largest nonprofits, Catholic Charities knows firsthand that individuals do not experience need in silos. Someone may come to us for food assistance, and we quickly identify additional needs: healthcare coordination, benefits navigation, mental health services, and housing support. Our teams coordinate these services both internally and with external partners, ensuring that people move through systems rather than getting lost. For example, A client may come to us through our food pantry, and within that same plan, receive support for healthcare, housing, and job placement, all tracked from start to finish. Across the nonprofit sector, organizations, we actively collaborate to identify challenges, share strategies, and map out solutions. As a sector, we are renowned for stepping in to stabilize individuals while systems catch up, ensuring that families do not fall through the crack. One of the most effective ways to strengthen system collaboration is through on-site engagement. I encourage all of our legislators to visit your local nonprofits, spend time with intake and case management teams, and see firsthand how services are coordinated. Observing how a client's case moves from intake to housing, benefits, and ongoing support provides invaluable insight into where the systems work well, where bottlenecks occur, and how accountability is maintained. Strengthening collaboration requires building the policies with clear understanding of how our nonprofits already work together, where system rules unintentionally slow progress, so that public policy supports and amplifies rather than inhibits these partnerships. At Catholic Charities, our mission is to meet people where they are and to help them achieve stability and independence. We take seriously our role as a trusted partner to the community and to all of our public agencies. And we look forward to continuing that partnership as we move forward to improve systems and ensure services reach those who need them the most. Thank you for your time today, and I will take any questions.
And thank you for the presentation and the work that you do. Members, any questions? Senator Considine, excuse me, Assemblymember Considine.
Thanks for the.
You can be a senator, that's fine.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation. I just have the same question that I had with the City of Las Vegas because I know Catholic Charities works with a lot of landlords. Are you paying market rate? Are you having like master leases? Like how do you sort of handle as many units as you utilize?
Sure. So at Catholic Charities, we actually have a single occupancy apartment complex of 120 units, but of course that is historically filled. And we do have an agreement with the City of Las Vegas to do housing and food services for them. For families that we work very closely with Help of Southern Nevada, Rescue Mission. So we will coordinate and try to get our individuals and families at the best organization if we do not have a place for them. But when we do have to do an apartment, we will negotiate. We do not pay market rate.
Members, any additional questions in Las Vegas? Seeing none, we'll go to Carson City or to Senator Krasner on Zoom. Seeing none, again, thank you for your help today, and we look forward to working with you during the interim as well.
Thank you.
And next, we will move over to the Las Vegas Rescue Mission. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Chair Flores. Heather Engel, CEO, Las Vegas Rescue Mission, and
Allison Martinez, COO at the Las Vegas Rescue Mission.
I'll let Allison open up with our programming, and then I'll follow it up with where we're at and where we're going.
Okay, so at the Las Vegas Rescue Mission, we have over 200 beds. We have 212 beds dedicated for emergency shelter services. We have 74 dedicated to single women or women with children. We have 96 dedicated to single men. We have 12 dedicated to single fathers. And we also have 30 beds dedicated to intact families. That can be however they define. So it can be two people that were homeless in an encampment together and they do not want to separate. It can be a single mother. It can be a single father. It can be an LGBTQ couple. We do not discriminate on how they define family. So we keep them together. That bed, those 30 beds do have a dedicated case manager, and their stay is as long as they need. Anybody in emergency shelter outside of that intact families, we do provide 12 nights dedicated for anybody single, 30 nights dedicated to anybody with a child. Anybody with a child, we automatically work with Title I Hope, and we get them connected to the schools to ensure that continuation does not stop based on their current status. Our average length of stay does turn out to be about 12 to 14 nights for singles. It has increased for family members. If we are working with another nonprofit agency, for example, Help Us Southern Nevada, if they are working on housing placement, we will extend date of their exit to when they get housed. So we are not kicking any family out or any person if they are working with another community agency. With our shelter services, we also have partnerships with Nevada Behavioral Health, NBH. We go to the courtyard every other week to do just regular outreach services, but we also have our lead case manager go out there every single Friday. She works with their case management team, identifies who needs addiction treatment, and we get them directly transported from the courtyard now to our addiction treatment program. So that program, we have 120 beds dedicated for those that have substance abuse issues. Big amount of that, about 96, is dedicated to single men. We have about 20 that are dedicated to women. At this point in time, we are basically at capacity. We have never been at capacity in the 7 years that I've been there. We usually average about 70 to 80. At this point in time, we're up to about 112 to 120 persons in addiction treatment. It is a 6-month-long addiction treatment program where they work with case management. They have clinical staff that they see, so individual and group therapy. We also have peer support to help them during transition. After the 6 months completion of treatment, we offer about 90 days of transitional. So that's where they work with peer support and case management to ensure that they can move out and they can move out into sober living, or if they've already begun work, that they are saving up and that they can move out independently and not return to homelessness.
Allison touched on only 24 beds for women's recovery, which is unacceptable. And we have on-demand treatment, so there is no barrier.
And I'm sorry, I don't know if we got your name for the record right
Heather Engel.
Please.
There is no barrier that we have for anybody wanting to explore treatment services. So about 3 years ago, I put together a capital campaign. The mission's been around since 1970, and the amount, we do about 30,000 meals a month, and we are partnerships in Ward 5. And we also have on-site medical care. We have a clinic on site with Hope Christian as well. And so our capital campaign is $44 million. My first phase is phase 1, which is the Shelter of Hope, which is for women, expanding women's treatment beds and women and children's shelter, and then putting more state-of-the-art stuff for us because we don't have any of that there. And that I should be breaking ground hopefully October or November of this year. As you know, it takes a lot of effort and skill and begging to raise capital funds, especially when we're up against what we're up against all the time. My phone does not stop ringing for anybody in the community that is specifically needing help with something. And I will never not help them wherever they're coming from, whether it's a governmental agency, whether it's them themselves, if somebody wants to explore sobriety, or they have a family member in something. So what I ask is that we really look at capital funding to expand our services. I have no room for any more staff. We've brought on the opiate money. It's going fantastic for MAT treatment, and that allows so many more people to live free lives. And so, capital funding, it's hard to do. We're doing it. We're good at it, but it is not that easy. The amount of effort it takes in order to raise this kind of money so that we can continue doing what we're doing and doing it as well as we do it and work with our community partners. There is no silo for any of us that I know of exists. Flawless, Sarah, they're on call them anytime. Our teams work together 24 hours a day, literally. And there's times when we're all involved with one specific thing. So, and I really do want to take a page from Falala's, what she said regarding come out and do intake with us. There's many demographics of homelessness. Right now, currently, we are being encroached on with encampments. That's affecting us greatly with rats coming in and Metro coming in, our city coming in twice a week to, sweep the cleaning. So I went and talked to some lieutenants, and we're going to try to toss that up a little bit so it's not consistent when they're coming out. So maybe we can start moving that along a little bit. But that service resistant population is what no one wants to talk about. It's what no affordable housing is going to fix. Affordable housing is going to help so many other people. And I want to touch on that briefly. These people work so hard to get their life back. That 8 ball, anybody I'm in long-term recovery. I've been there. Your life can change, and it takes forever to get it back on track. And the society, and the way it's structured, is telling them to stay down. Our food stamps, if we have our human trafficking girls who are used to rolling some big money, but now they're living a different life. They get a quarter raise. So we're telling them, stay here and feed your family, or you may not rise. And then we're pushing our low-income people out to the end of the desert where there's no appropriate lighting. There's nothing for children to do. There's not a McDonald's that everybody else gets to enjoy. So, there's a lot of systemic problems going on here. Mental health. In the Reagan administration, they decommissioned all of sanitariums and asylums, as they should. They're horrible places, but they were never, ever replaced. So there's no place for somebody that's chronically mentally ill or even may need 6 to 10 months somewhere structured. The psych hold does not work. So there's a lot of systemic issues, but what I can say, and we take great pride in, is our partnerships with other nonprofits and with the city and the county and, and everybody else. Does the government make it complicated? 100%. Absolutely. I wish that things were freed up a little bit. I wish it wasn't so complicated to get what we need done. That would free us up a whole lot too. But I invite you to come down for our intake. We have a 3 o'clock intake and a 6 o'clock intake, and meet the people, see what those demographics of homelessnesses are, because we can't take a broad brush to them all. They're all very individual and need individual help. And then we have our ones that they don't want to do anything about that right now. That's the conversation that we need to have. So with that, thank you so much for having us. We'll open it for any questions.
And I do appreciate the sentiment. We were actually very intentional in avoiding having an affordable housing conversation today because
sure.
I did not want to make that mistake of lumping that conversation as if it were the same thing, because we know it's not. So I do appreciate the sentiment and tone of that. Senator Neal, please.
Thank you, Chair. So it's a very specific question. So I was reading in City of Las Vegas, where they're saying, I think it's July 26th, they're going to bring in their long-term injectables for medicine. Mm-hmm. So how would that help the rescue mission if that program gets online in the summer of 26 with the folks that come through the rescue mission in terms of being on a long-term injectable? Is it helpful?
Allison Martinez for the record. I 100% think that it would be helpful because in our shelter services specifically, we're getting people that are coming in and out. We give them a longer stay, but that doesn't mean that they necessarily take us up on that longer stay. And they could be in and out, leaving, coming back. So having a long injectable medication, that would greatly take away the barrier of missing medication, losing medication, et cetera. There's a lot of benefits to it. So I would love to hear more about that or see how I can even support it.
Well, yeah, it's in their presentation. So they're still here. Maybe catch them. Just quick follow-up, just different question. But so the federal administration did significant cuts to homeless funding, right? When I read the NPR articles, around $532 million, right? And the goal was to prevent long-term housing. So they shifted towards supporting shorter-term housing and certain amounts of, I guess, dealing with addiction and other things. How have you seen that in real terms come down? Have you seen a negative or positive impact of whatever that new policy shift was based on whatever they believe is the rationale to deal with this issue.
Allison, again, for the record. I feel like we're kind of unique, so I don't think we're seeing it the way other nonprofits see it at this point in time, just because of how we are financially set up at the rescue mission with donations. We actually have one and only one funding source for our recovery program outside of donations, and that's the opioid money from the city of Las Vegas. So that enabled us to increase our staffing, get another co-occurring counselor, medical staff, and we were able to introduce medication-assisted treatment to the Las Vegas Rescue Mission. Prior to that, we didn't have it. But also outside of those funds, we are basically funded donation-wise for that. So that's how we're ebbing and flowing. Where we see more funding coming in, which has been helpful, has been the partnerships with like Nevada Behavioral Health, Molina, some of the other additional MCOs, Silver Summit, because they're offsetting what we need to pay for our recovery with shelter services.
I know this isn't the jurisdiction of this committee, but that might be a conversation for the future, Chair, is the MCOs. There is this, I can't remember the exact name. I know I tried to tamper with it and realign their money. But the MCOs have, there's an allotment that helps them to pay for homelessness services. And so it's like, I think it came from that 2019 conversation that you wanted to dig into around, I think it was 274. But it might be good to see what they're bringing on with those dollars, to see how they're infusing within the homelessness groups and nonprofits. I just think it's an interesting angle to try to understand, because some are and some aren't.
Yes.
Right? Like some are like, you know, we're doing X, and some are like, we're paying for housing, but how and in what manner, right?
Correct.
So,
and some are very easy to work with, and some already have established other systems, and they're not necessarily as open. So it would be great to get that.
Okay.
Members, any additional questions in Las Vegas? Seeing none. Any questions from Carson City or Senator Krasner on Zoom? None. Well, thank you both for the presentation. And again, we do intend to reach out. Just be on the lookout from an email from Assemblymember Considine and myself. Hopefully scheduling some time to meet. And with that, thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Last on the agenda is public comment. Anybody wishing to join us for public comment, either in Carson City or Las Vegas. We do have somebody in Las Vegas. Please come forward. We don't have anybody in Carson City, I believe. Whenever you're ready, sir, and we do ask that you please limit your remarks to 2 minutes.
I can't hear you.
We ask that if you could limit your remarks to 2 minutes, please.
All right, I'll do my best.
Please.
I'll just read off what I have prepared. And
yes, sir. Please.
hopefully I can stay within that. But here we go. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and members of the committee. My name is David Lee Nace, N-A-C-E, a Nevada resident for 26 years here in Las Vegas. Thank you for letting me speak here. Purpose of the appearance, I'm here to outline a pattern of fiduciary breaches, vendor-driven enrichment mechanisms, and AI-influenced administrative barriers that have affected Nevada residents' ability to recover unclaimed property from 2007 to 2025. This is also pertinent to what you guys are talking about today with the nonprofits and other entities that are trying to get money. So, core framing, this matter is not of isolated errors. It's a structural ecosystem where fiduciary duties have been diluted or delegated through third-party vendors, benefit financially from complexity and denial patterns. Statutory language has evolved in ways that obscure accountability, and automated systems now influence outcomes without transparency or due process safeguards. Why this matters to this committee: these issues implicate constitutional due process rights, Fifth Amendment taking clause mainly, statutory compliance under NRS 128 and NRS 239, FINRA-regulated securities handling, and the integrity of Nevada's fiduciary obligations to its residents. Transition, talking points, well, breach of fiduciary duty. Nevada's unclaimed property system is a public fiduciary function, yet critical responsibilities have been delegated to private vendors. These vendors control intake, classification, valuation, and denial logic, functions that should remain under state oversight. When fiduciary duties are delegated without transparency, the state's constitutional obligations to its residents are compromised. The key message here is that the state cannot outsource fiduciary duty and still meet constitutional standards, whether it be with Nevada's Constitution or the United States Constitution. Third-party vendor enrichment. The vendors' compensated structures appear to be reward retention. If you look at like the contractual language in their prospectus, the initial MSAs through whether it be Switch, A Avenue, or Social Entrepreneurs Inc., it's very adhesive, one-sided. It's not benefiting Nevada residents. It's not benefiting you people or these people that were here earlier today talking. So we go with that. Lack of contact transparency prevents the public from understanding the financial incentives that are driving these outcomes. Complexity of legislation, and there's AI influence. Over time, statutory language in NRS 128 has become increasingly complex, fragmented, and cross-referential. This complexity creates opportunities for AI-assisted drafting that embeds vendor-friendly provisions, interpretive ambiguity that favors administrative discretion, automated denial systems that rely on an internal logic rather than statutory intent. These patterns reflect a broader trend of intellectual capture, where specialized vendors shape the rules that govern them.
And Mr. Leetnace, I apologize to interrupt you. We did hit the 2-minute mark, however. I did want to let you know a couple of things. First, members, I don't know if you all saw, but that your emails that you had submitted were uploaded for the record, so they're on the record now.
Oh, that's good to go.
So we were able to read through that. But second, and probably more important, Senator Neal and myself and a few other folk have expressed interest in ensuring that when we talk about artificial intelligence, that we specifically ensure that we are not allowing for artificial intelligence in government to be dictating whether or not we're going to approve services, provide some type of benefit. We know that other states have taken the lead on those types of conversations, and Nevada has been having those conversations in depth. In fact, in March, in the meeting scheduled for March, we will be tackling conversations around how we utilize AI to grant, deny, et cetera, services. I know that wasn't the full breadth of your conversation today, but I did want you to know and be aware of that. I think that meeting will be of interest to you. For today, we're scheduled to meet on March 5th. And we will
March 5th or March 2nd?
5th.
All right.
Yeah, we intend to continue to kind of expand on some of these growing concerns around AI and how government uses them and doesn't use it. But again, I know that wasn't the full breadth of everything you brought forth today, but I just wanted to give you a heads up on that. If there's anything in addition to what you've said that you would like for us to consider, please feel free to shoot us another email, and I'm sure that will get to the members again for consideration.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for joining us, and thank you for waiting to the very end.
No problem.
For the March,
I wish I would have gone in the beginning.
Yeah, I was going to say for the March meeting, please feel free, if you have any additional comments, to put them in the front end. That way you don't have to wait to the very end.
Simone, thank you.
Thank you, sir. And with that, thank you all members and to our amazing GA folk who helped this meeting run as smoothly as it does. And if there's any errors, that was on me. Thank you all. This meeting's adjourned. Oh, I'm sorry. Somebody just reminded me that we may have public comment over the phone. Thank you. Do we have anybody wishing to join us for public comment over the phone?
Thank you, Chair Flores. The public line is open and working, and we have no callers at this time.
Thank you. And with that, this meeting's adjourned.